in the end zone so he wouldn't hit it. So those were the stadiums back, and they just put anything in there.
I remember, was it Blake Griffin jumped over like a Kia at an NBA slam dunk competition?
He did do that.
Yeah, the jumping over the cars bit was a thing in the NBA for a little while.
So I found out you're a basketball. Are you a basketball fan?
I am a big basketball fan, yeah.
Are you 80s basketball fan, 90s?
Well, I was born in 1989.
Okay.
So,
most
of, I mean, very late 80s, very late 80s. So, I mean, mid 90s, mid to late 90s is when I really started. So, I obviously remember the Bulls dynasty, particularly the second three-peat.
Right. Yeah.
And then the arrival of Kobe Bryant and those Lakers with Shaquille O'Neal. So that was probably like my entry point where the Bulls in the mid.
So you kind of came in like when Tim Duncan came in the league, 99, 2000, right?
Yeah, Tim Duncan and David Robinson, the year they beat the Knicks in the NBA Finals, was it?
Was that the strike shortened year?
I don't think so.
That was 99, right? Something like that.
So yeah, I'm mostly a college basketball aficionado, but by extension, I also like the NBA. So I'm excited that tonight, and we'll get into this later.
Yeah.
The U.S. men's basketball team has its first exhibition game this evening at 9:30 Central. The game's in Las Vegas, so 9:30 Central against Canada, which has a solid team. You don't think of Canada as a basketball hotbed? They've got some really good players on that team. It'll be a good test for the U.S. team tonight.
Who's the best Canadian basketball player of all time?
The best Canadian basketball player of all time? I mean, probably. He's probably the most accomplished. But I'd have to look at a list.
Yeah,
but,
same here.
But Steve Nash comes to mind. But Canada has several prominent NBA players on their team going up against the United States in an exhibition game, and we'll see if they actually face. The Olympics, by the way, are what, 2 weeks?
Something like that. Yeah.
It crept up on me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even realize that. I mean, I knew that there were Olympic games this summer, but I saw a promo for it on NBC. And it was like the Olympic Games start July 24th. I was like, wow, really?
I worked at NBC in 2016 when the Olympics hit, and it was just, I was like a 2-week vacation. We did nothing.
Right.
Because we showed all the programming. And the one I was like, hey, we're thinking about doing a newscast at midnight. I'm like, well, have fun with that because I'm not going to be with that. Going back to the basketball thing, always a great question is, it elicits so many great responses. You're down by 1.
Okay.
You have one player to pick to make a 12-foot shot to win the game. Who do you pick? You have 5 seconds on the clock. It's always been a great question because my answer, people are like, really? But I want to hear who you think. If you had one player to make that shot, who would it be?
A 12-foot shot.
Yeah, not a 20, because you get a 25. Well, Steph Curry, you get a 2-footer, Shaq. So 12 feet out.
You know who immediately comes to mind is Kobe Bryant. I feel like Kobe Bryant was good in all facets of the game, all areas of the court. I feel like Kobe Bryant, he had the clutch gene.
Yeah.
So I think Kobe Bryant is like, if I'm doing word association, like first person that comes to mind was Kobe Bryant.
Because I'm a little older than you, and I saw him do this. Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What? People are like, what? I'm like, he was just absolutely amazing from 12 feet in. He was an amazing, and he always made those shots. I always think about him. He comes to mind when you talk about basketball. I mean, there's no wrong answer really, but some of those shots that he made and some that Kobe made were like, good Lord. This is amazing.
Yeah, no, Kobe Bryant, I saw Jason Tatum is wearing number 10 for the U.S. Olympic team in honor of Kobe Bryant. So that was nice. And Jason Tatum, of course, coming fresh off of an NBA championship, and his teammate Derek White will be joining him. The USA Olympic team announced today that Kawhi Leonard is pulling out of the Olympics as he continues to deal with nagging knee injuries, I believe it is. So Derek White in, another member of the Boston Celtics. But I'm looking forward to watching that. And then I know it's an Olympic exhibition, right? But how much sports do we have? I mean, how many sports do we have right now?
Well, who's the 17-year-old that's lighting it up? I saw a video. He was hitting like 25 footers.
Oh, now you're in my wheelhouse. I think you're referring to Cooper Flagg, who is the #1 college basketball recruit in the country, who will be playing for my Duke Blue Devils this coming season. Yeah, Cooper Flagg is
he that good?
He is he is already expected to be the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft next summer. Yeah, I saw the highlight, and it's easy to look at highlights, but yes, Cooper Flagg was making tough shots over Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, and He was, the US, it was like the select team, like the younger players were playing a scrimmage
Right.
against the actual team. And they actually only won by one, I believe. The actual Olympic team won 74-73, if I'm not mistaken.
I got a quick Olympic story for you that you might not know. So 1984, the Olympic team, that was a year that the Soviets didn't come over, but we had a great Olympic basketball team in 84. Well, the coach was Bobby Knight, the assistant coach was C.M. Newton, and the final spot on the team came down between Charles Barkley and former Vanderbilt basketball player Jeff Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Barkley doesn't make it, Jeff Turner does, because C.M. Newton is an assistant coach. That's always been a consternation for a lot of people. Like, Barkley didn't make the team, but Jeff Turner was a damn good player. 6'9", left-handed, could rebound really good, had a great career with the Orlando Magic. So I hear always Olympic team. Always think about that, how Barkley didn't make the cut. He got beat out by a Vanderbilt guy.
Huh. That's
Jeff
interesting.
Turner.
Now, did Jeff Turner have an impact on that team?
He was okay. I mean, he filled in admirably when he was, things he had to get done. But, that was a team with Steve Alford was on that team in '84. And so with not the Soviets being in the Olympics, people are like, nah. But the fact that Barkley didn't make it is still one that I think, from what I understand, him talking still drives him a little bit batty.
Well, I remember when the U.S. women's basketball team, the roster was revealed several weeks ago, and Caitlin Clark was not on the team, which fueled days worth of headlines about
Right.
Caitlin Clark not making the team. And to mention Duke again, everyone said, well, Christian Laettner made the dream team. Well, Christian Laettner made the dream team because that was the first year, if I'm not mistaken, 1992 was the first year that NBA players participated in the Olympics. So that was sort of like Christian Laettner was sort of an olive branch to the old guard that, used to be collegiate. It was mostly collegiate,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So it was like, here, we'll save a spot for a collegiate player to make the team. And I think Shaquille O'Neal was considered, among others. But at the time, Christian Laettner was coming off of back-to-back national championships and was, by most accounts, the most accomplished college player playing. But, but I don't think he ever got into any sort of meaningful action in the Olympics.
Right.
He was carrying bags. He was carrying Michael Jordan's bags, basically, which, hey, you know what? That's something that you can put on your resume, carrying Michael Jordan's bags. But, we're going to get into this in the next segment, but we've got NFL training camp starting in a couple of weeks. So the dead period of the NFL, which there really isn't ever a dead period of the NFL, but this is the closest thing to a dead period in the NFL. We'll get to training camp, and there's one aspect of training camp that I always thoroughly enjoy. It's the training camp stars, and I have stars written in quotations in our rundown, because it's always a part of training camp, the unheralded player that comes out of nowhere and makes a huge impression in training camp. And then when the season rolls around, they either don't make an impact at all. Maybe they're not even on the team. They get cut. They're on the practice squad. But I feel like it's something that most fans, and I'm guilty of this too, they get hyped up around some guy they hadn't heard of before the start of training camp because he makes huge plays in practice and maybe in a preseason game. So I want to dig into Joe Dubin's encyclopedic mind and talk about the best training camp stars that the Titans have had in their history. And we encourage you to chime in as well. You can also tune in on the stream, but I would encourage you to chime in at 615-737-1025. Call us. The YouTube chat has been popping the past few days. Our text line, I believe, is still down. Hopefully that will be rectified soon. So call us the old-fashioned way.
Ian, working on that?
Yes, Ian.
Yes, I am working on it.
So call us. Reach us the old-fashioned way at 615-737-1025. Adam Ving and Joe Dubin in for Jared today on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in today for Jared. Ian Safar is always with us as well. And I want to get into this subject. I was thinking about this earlier. So we're 2 weeks away from Titans training camp, and training camps opening around the NFL. They're staggered, but they're mostly opening in a couple of weeks. And one thing that's always present in training camp, and I think Hard Knocks plays a big role in this. If you ever watch the Hard Knocks, the one during training camp, they just have one now that's like the New York Giants during the offseason. So it's about their front office, which I watched the first episode the other day. It was interesting, but I'm not sure it's going to hold my attention through multiple episodes. But I was a big Hard Knocks fan growing up, just like many sports fans probably were. And one of the storylines you can count on every single season of Hard Knocks is they find one charismatic, undrafted guy, 7th rounder, who is looking to make the team, and they follow him around as they play in the preseason, and they hope to make an impression, and he becomes sort of the star of training camp. Okay. Of course, you have the top players on the team that you root for, but then there's that one guy, that 6th round pick out of Appalachian State, who had peeled off a huge run during a 7-on-7 drill, and now he's the talk of training camp. But more often than not, those players don't amount to much when the season actually starts. Most of the time, they don't even make the team, but they might make the team on the practice squad. They might, get cut and move on to another team. But those training camp stars, and as I said, I have it written in quotations. So, Joe, from your experience covering this team for a long time, which Titans players that were standouts in training camp, surprise standouts in training camp, come to mind that never amounted to anything once the season actually started?
Well, there was one, we laugh at Paul Williams. He was a guy back in the 2000s where he was always on this team. He was doing great in practice, great in preseason, never made the team. And he was on the team for like 3 or 4 years. He never did anything. And I always laugh because he has the name of the great Paul Williams, the singer, songwriter. So he was a guy that would go out there and make all these great plays. Like, oh, this is a guy, they need receivers. He was terrible. Then there was another receiver named Jake Shafino, would go out there. Jake was fantastic, and then he would always pull a hamstring, and he's done for the year. It was gone. And there's these receivers, and there's a running back, and I've got his last name. It's Moore. And I remember his first name in 2007, ran all over the New England Patriots in a preseason game, was doing fantastic. Like, this guy is amazing, and he's going to be the offset to Lindell White. It was the year before Chris Johnson got here. Gone. Did nothing. Never heard from him again. Cut in training camp and was gone. And that was it. The end of him. They had Chris Henry on that team. They had Lindell White. And the next year they drafted Chris Johnson. But one guy that stood out, Adam, which was weird, is that people don't remember, the Titans had LeGarrette Blount in training camp. And I'm telling you right now, so remember LeGarrette Blount got in trouble at Oregon because the Boise State guy taunted him. He hit him in the face. And I don't blame LeGarrette Blount for doing that because if you taunt me, you're getting hit. So he came here, and I'm telling you, they wanted to see how his attitude was. And I promise you, in practice, they pushed him, hit him after the whistle, and Fisher will deny it. They'll all deny it. But I'm telling you, so Blount gets to a fight. He gets to a fight in practice, and he goes crazy. Well, I shoot the video. I call ESPN. I say, hey, video, I'm like, send it on. Send it up to ESPN. It's blasted everywhere. LeGarrette Blount put on, he gets cut. Well, he doesn't make the roster. They're trying to sneak him on, and then other teams grab him. So there are these stars you see in training camp that don't get the opportunity to go someplace else. LeGarrette Blount ended up winning, I think, 2 Super Bowls. But you got the guys like Paul Williams, Jake Shafino. These guys just never do anything.
One guy who just came to mind in recent Titans history, who has been on the team, but I feel like what he did in training camp in the preseason never translated to the regular season, is Julius Chestnut. Julius Chestnut, I feel like, is a player we hear about a lot in training camp, but then didn't make an impact during the regular season. In 2022, he played in 6 games. He had carries for 12 yards. His longest run was 5 yards. Oh. So, but I mean, Ian, I feel like Chestnut is a player that has been that training camp darling the last couple of years.
I'd say so. I feel like the running back position in general is just...
Receiver and running back, I feel like, are good for this.
Yes, they seem to stick out a lot in the preseason, especially, backup running backs in the playing time in the preseason, and how much teams, how little teams prepare.
Well, not only that, but
game plan.
you talk about training camp. There's those who break free. I mean, like Drew Bennett, 2001. Nobody. I'm sure Derek Mason never heard of him before he showed up in practice. He was fantastic. He parlayed what he did here into the contract for the Rams, and he was awful for the Saints Rams. But he's a guy that threw like training camp, like that's something, because it's very rare that an undrafted guy makes the team. The Titans had 2 last year. They had Matt Jackson, TK McClendon. Both those guys from Eastern Kentucky made the football team as undrafted. I think now it's 7 rounds in the league. You get an opportunity to kind of pick and choose more, but there's always those training camp starts. And you know what else I hate, Adam and Ian? This as well. I hate it when I see Rex Rhodes tweet about Will Levis was 10 of 13 today. And
we're going to get into that. I'm glad you got to that,
yes!
because we're going to get into that. Not specifically about Joe, but that is something that I always find interesting about how NFL training camp is reported on. But I was telling you this during the break, Joe, when I was at the Tennessean and during the Predators off season in the summertime, I would often chip in on Titans coverage. So I would go to training camp and help out either Jim Wyatt or Jason Wolf, doing some Titans sidebars. And I feel like whenever I would always write about the highly regarded player who was on the cut line. I did a story about Bishop Sankey. There's a name that you probably haven't heard if you're a Titans fan in like 6 years. Bishop Sankey, I wrote a story about him. He gets cut like not too long after. I wrote a story about Justin Hunter, and there was also the connection because Justin Hunter, grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So there was that connection. He gets cut. I remember writing a story about Dorial Green Beckham and like how, Mike Mularkey was like on his last straw with Dorial Green Beckham, and then he gets traded to the Eagles for Dennis Kelly. So I feel like I was that guy that if I'm writing about you between like 2015 and 2017, you're in trouble. But it's, like I said, it happens a lot on Hard Knocks because it's a great story to follow if you are a documentarian. Like this guy who's come from nothing on the football field, like small school, Division II school, and he's making the team and he's making an impression, and the veteran players are taking him under their wings and all of that stuff. And there's the occasional time where that player, they have the meeting, they go into the office, and you can tell the player's nervous, and the GM's like, "You're making the team," and then a few days later in real life, it's like so-and-so has been cut by the so-and-so team. And
let me ask you this. You go interview Bishop Sankey.
Yes.
And he's on the cut line. This could be a master class in sports journalism. How do you approach a guy who's on the cut line? I mean, how do you interview a guy that and he probably knows he's getting cut as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. You do have to be sensitive, right? Because you don't clearly, if you're asking the player about it, they know it too. Clearly, like they know where they stand in the pecking order. So you just have to be, you have to be delicate. You don't want to, as you know full well, athletes, they have huge egos, but they're also incredibly sensitive. Those egos are fragile. So if you ask the question in a way that they can construe as insulting, you're not going to get much out of it. So you have to play to their emotions a little bit.
I remember with Bishop Sankey, I asked, I forget who it was, Rustin Webster, I think, who drafted him as a GM. And then we were like, well, what stood out about Bishop Sankey? Because he's not on like the top 15 running backs. And they said, well, at the Senior Bowl, he was able to pick up pass blocking really quickly. And that's why you took him in so early.
He was the first running back taken in that draft.
In 2014?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bishop Sankey.
Was he?
I'm pretty sure. I'd have to,
I think you might be right.
I think he was.
He was awful.
I didn't look that up, but that's something I just remembered.
He was a terrible
Washington
player. Terrible. He was terrible.
He indeed was the highest drafted running back that year at number 54. There's some interesting names in here. Some good player. This was not a good running back draft class. Probably the most successful running back out of this class was Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was drafted in 2014. Devontae Freeman was also drafted in 2014, but that's really it.
That's pretty weak.
Like it was a weak running back. It was a weak running back class. By the way, the top quarterback drafted that year was Blake Bortles. So like 2014 draft, I don't think seems very memorable, but I would love to hear from Titans fans about their favorite training camp stars, the guys that they were attached to in training camp, in the preseason, thought they would have a huge impact on the Titans, and it just did not come to be.
DGB is a good one.
Yeah, Dorial Green Beckham for sure.
He definitely had some hype during that first camp there.
615-737-1025. Call us, YouTube chat us with your favorite Titans training camp, quote unquote, stars that you can remember. We'll get back into that next. Adam Ving and Joe Dubin in for Jared on 1025, 1063, The Game. Stillman and Company on 1025, 1063, The Game. Adam Vingen, Joe Dubin in for Jared today. And we're talking training camp, quote unquote, stars for the Tennessee Titans. Or if you fancy another team, you can let us know about that as well at 615-737-1025. Our phone and text line is driven or are driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. So, Joe, you mentioned this as it relates to Rex Road, and it's funny that you mentioned it because it's one thing, from a journalism standpoint that they always find very fascinating about NFL training camp, and that's what I call the breathless reporting of practice in NFL training camp. Now, you are a seasoned, experienced television reporter. You've had to do this as well. I'm sure it's a little bit different. I'm sure when you're on television versus when you're in print, and it's different now that you have social media. But I always find it fascinating how granular football reporters get when reporting on what happens in training camp. Like, I saw our man TD. He'll join us tomorrow for the TD Power Hour from 4 to 5 tomorrow instead of the usual 3 to 4. So TD will be with us tomorrow from 4 to 5. And I always follow Tehran's updates from Titans practice and training camp. Obviously, incredibly knowledgeable about the sport. But he'll tweet something like today on 7, and I'm not picking on TD here. I saw him today, so he's the first one that comes to mind.
Pick on him.
He says, DeAndre Hopkins catches a fantastic ball in the corner of the end zone on a out route from. Well, I'm just using all of these terms that, are maybe above my pay grade a little bit because I'm not as intelligent of a football fan as or a reporter as Tehran and others is. But like, keeping track of, and I remember Jared and Joe got into this a big time, and Ian remembers this a couple of years ago when when Ryan Tannehill was throwing interceptions, right? He was throwing a lot of interceptions in practice. And Jared was talking about how important, like how meaningful that was, that Ryan Tannehill was throwing the interceptions in practice, which Joe disagreed with. And they continue to bicker about it to this day. But I always find the reporting about, because obviously my expertise is in hockey, and practice in hockey is different. One, because you can actually watch all of practice in hockey versus in the NFL during the regular season when you're only allowed to watch them stretch, basically. And there's only so much you can report on in what happens in football practice versus hockey practice. So it's a much different world. But I always find it interesting. I'll read stories that will be like, Will Levis during minicamp was 57 of 73 with 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I'm like, how meaningful is that really
right.
that he's doing that?
No, it's not. When I saw I give Rexroad grief because I think he's a great writer and he's fun to mess with. So that's why other reporters aren't, so they get really defensive and all that. So I like making fun of Joe. I think, but you're right. I think I saw Channel 2 had this graphic, which drove me crazy during training camp. Titans defense looking good so far in training camp. And I'm like, who are they practicing against ghosts? Are you comparing that against air? I don't looking good. So how are they looking good so far? And I was like, just let's stop with the nonsense with this. Let's just find an angle, talk to players, and quit putting up that stuff. And all that's just really like, what in the world are they talking about? So that's why training camp for this next 6 weeks drives me insane because of those stats like that, which don't mean anything. Another example, 2019, Patriots come here for joint practice versus the Titans. I'll never forget, Adam, going out there watching Tom Brady absolutely destroy the Titans on 7-on-7. Destroyed them. They couldn't keep up, pinpoint passes. Then you get to the playoff game and they beat Brady and I get all that. But watching Mariota that day, he was terrible. Mariota was so bad, he was airmailing passes that were hitting the Channel 4 parking lot. They were awful. And I was talking to somebody, I was like, I'm not, remain anonymous. I said, how do you going to report how bad Mariota was? And it was the lines of like, well, he just had a bad day. And it was so bad out there in training camp that the bad of that was not reported that day. It really wasn't reported. Nobody's like, he was terrible that day. So it goes to back and forth. Like we send to these stats, like how great they are, but also sometimes when a guy's really bad, tell people how bad he was that day. It's training camp, for whatever it is, just training camp, report the story and move on with it.
At this point, the preseason games, and I was talking about this with Nick Frazier and Nick Keiser the other day while we were filling in for you and Chase from 9 to 11. The preseason games have become, I wouldn't say obsolete, but they've become less meaningful. It's the joint practices that have now become the real test of how a team looks in training camp. But you're right. We have this conversation every year, and I imagine it's not only happening here in Tennessee, it's happening across every NFL market. Was it the offense being bad today or was the defense good
right.
or vice versa?
Right.
Well, they're trying hard, they're practicing, but they're not going full bore. And, I think we can get suckered into how one particular unit is doing. I think the Titans defensive line is wrecking shop in training camp. Well, yeah. Have you seen their offensive line?
Right.
Like it's their offensive line has been an issue for years. So yes, not saying that the Titans defensive line doesn't look good, but you have to put it into its proper context. They're practicing against a bad offensive line.
Yeah.
So we'll see that in a couple of weeks. Look, we're all ready for football to come back. This time of year, it can be a little harrowing when it comes to sports content because I am not a huge baseball fan. Like baseball for me is the perfect background noise.
There we go.
Like I will put it on TV if I'm doing something
To take a nap in
Yeah.
the summer
I used
on the
Attaboy.
couch.
I used to, I mean, like when I lived in Washington, I would put on Nationals games on the radio while I was driving. It was like soothing to listen to baseball while I'm driving. But I can't get into the goings on of the baseball season in June and July, especially. I pay a little bit more attention as we get towards the pennant races and the
We all do.
postseason,
And I've
right?
always said end it Labor Day weekend. End baseball Labor Day weekend, because what happens is mid-September, you get the Cardinals, who are 28 games out, taking on the Chicago White Sox or some crazy, like nobody cares. And you're hurting guys' arms. End it Labor Day weekend and be done with it. But they're not, because that's just way too much. I understand all that, but I'm with you, man. Baseball, my baseball moment, Adam, though, was big Braves fan, big Dale Murphy fan. They traded Dale Murphy in July of 90 from the Braves to the Phillies. I was done after that. But I'm done. I'm not going to. And then I had a great fantasy baseball team in 94. That was the year they had the strike. And I was like, you SOBs. My team was stacked. I was going to win the entire thing, and they called the strike. And they canceled the World Series, and that really bugged me. It still bugs me 30 years later, and I refuse to get over it.
We do have talking season coming up next week, though. SEC Media Days next week in Dallas. It was here last year.
Right.
I did attend. I was helping the wonderful Teresa Walker with the Associated Press. I was helping her with her coverage of SEC Media Days. And it was an interesting world. Like, that was my first time attending one of those things. It's an interesting world. I mean, a lot of talking, but not a lot of substance in the talking.
The only time it ever made really a big deal, and I hate bringing this up, and don't get mad at me, Ian or Adam, was when Clay Travis asked Tim Tebow if he was a virgin.
Oh, my.
At Media Days. And I remember there was just this hush tone across the entire auditorium for that. And that was the rise, unfortunately, of Clay Travis to where he is now. But that's the one that stands out to me. It was in Birmingham, Adam. These people would show up and they would get media. I did a thing one time. I had to wait to interview James Franklin because he was given autographs to the family of a guy that worked at the Chamber of Commerce that had zero media, which shouldn't have been there, but they had credentials. And I'm like, what's going on? All these people didn't belong there. It was unbelievably chaotic. So now they've kind of tempered it down a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Nick Saban gone, you will not have the Alabama fans like, hey, coach, I got a question for you. Big fan. What do you think about this year? That was actually a question to him one time at Media Days.
Well, last year when it was in Nashville, it was at the Grand Hyatt downtown, and there was construction happening right outside, so it was near impossible to get to as you normally would. But the event was going on upstairs in the conference room area, so the fans could not access it.
Good.
But there were fans lined up right in the lobby at the foot of the escalator, so that when the coaches came in, I always found it entertaining that Nick Saban was always accompanied by a police officer or something like an actual police officer or a sheriff of some kind. Like someone was going to attempt to jump him while he was trying to get up the escalator. I don't know, but it's going to be less entertaining for sure.
Well, they moved it to Dallas.
It's in Dallas this year, yeah,
because of Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference. But my understanding is they want it back here, and but that's going to be something like they're going to move that around, like the draft, because cities see that and see what goes on. Like I tell people, the NFL draft is not coming back here for 25 years. And like, well, I'll be back here next 5. No, it's not.
Think it'll be that long? 25?
Yeah, you know why? Because if I'm every other NFL city, I want that.
Yeah.
Titans already had your shot. The Titans did a great thing and also hurt them because it was so well done, so massively popular. Other NFL cities want that. So next year, the draft is in Green Bay, which will be fantastic, in Lambeau Field.
Let's hope it doesn't snow.
Hope it doesn't snow, right? So these other cities want these drafts. And if I am, a random city, Seattle, give me that. I want that. Hell, Detroit had more people than that. It gets better and better and better. Why should Nashville be rewarded that again when other cities haven't gotten that?
It's a good question. And maybe we can ask that to Chris Sanders. 615-737-1025. Forever Titans wide receiver Chris Sanders will join us next. Adam Bingen, Joe Dubin in for Jared on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared. And it's 2:45 on a Wednesday. So you know what that means. It's time to talk to our dear friend Chris Sanders, forever Titans wide receiver. Chris Sanders. And Chris, Joe and I have been spending the past couple of segments talking about what I call training camp, quote unquote, stars. Players that make a huge impact in training camp or the preseason. Fans get really excited about them, and then nothing comes of it. Maybe the player doesn't make that same impact, on the team during the regular season. You've been around, my friend. Can you remember a player or two that was in a couple of training camps with you that could fall into that category?
I can't remember. I know he was a running back, but he came in and we did 7-on-7, earlier in that year. But then we got in camp. Did he look good? But then all of a sudden he just kind of fizzled. So you have a lot of guys like that. But at the end of the day, you better believe the coaches know who's going to be playing at the beginning of the season. So it works like that.
So one thing that I've seen, Chris, that I find interesting, and I feel like it's a relatively new phenomenon, is the quarterback, the wide receivers, the pass catchers on the team. Before training camp, they go to some exotic location and they practice. And Will Levis, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tajay Spears, and Chigakonkwo, and Josh Wiley went to Mexico to practice.
Oh my God.
Did you do this in your day? Was this a thing in your day?
First of all, I'm upset because I never did it. The only place we probably went to was maybe Chuck E. Cheese or Wendy's to get a biggie bag. So, but the times has changed, and sometimes you want to build camaraderie, and sometimes it does take that, because if you look at this roster, if you look at the offense, a lot of guys play different places, and a lot of guys really don't know each other. So where's the best place to go? Mexico. So you can get drink a little Coca-Cola, but also learn plays and know your players. So I think Will Levis did a great job by actually getting those guys together and also have fun, because you actually need that.
I know you've been asked, I'm sure, a lot about this wide receiver group. A lot of excitement about DeAndre Hopkins, of course, but Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd as well. A much more established veteran group this time around than last year when it was DeAndre Hopkins and Nick. No disrespect to Nick Westbrook-Akine or Kyle Phillips, but a much different name brand recognition. What do you see as the ceiling for that group? Now, a lot of it has to do with Will Levis and his development, but when you think about Hopkins and Ridley and Boyd specifically, what do you see as the floor or the ceiling for that group in terms of production?
You know what? That's a great question. I think the ceiling is high. And the reason why I think the ceiling is high, because if you look at last year, the only explosive receiver that you really had last year was Hop. Hop was the only guy that was making plays downfield. But now you got a slew of guys. You got Tyler Boyd that has a lot of experience. You have Calvin Ridley, to where I watched him run routes last month, and he's an explosive wide receiver. So now you went from a wide receiving core that was okay to an explosive wide receiving core. And when you talk about the ceiling being high, I think the ceiling's been high because you have some great guys in that room. And then you go away from that. Don't count out Traylon Burks. Don't count out, Kyle Phillips, and also don't count out Jackson. There's a lot of skill in that room. There's a lot of explosiveness in that room. So if these guys can go out and do what we see on paper, I think this can be one of the best wide receiver core in the league.
Talking to the great Chris Sanders today. Chris, your voice a little hoarse. You've been singing Lionel Richie at night. What's going on?
No, I've been singing some Billy Ocean songs. I've been coaching, man. When I coach so loud, man. I coach loud, so I've been screaming. I just got done doing a camp about 15 minutes ago, so my voice is a little hoarse. But first of all, I got a bone to pick with you, man.
Yeah, buddy.
I've been calling you the last 3 days, and you don't even answer my calls, man.
I never got one call from you.
I called you because I was just called to check on you, and all I get is your voicemail. All I hear is, "Hello, is it me you're looking for?" That's all I get.
Oh man!
Do you have a singing voicemail?
I do not, but I'd like for Chris Sanders to record one for me.
That was pretty good.
Hey, let me ask you this. I was just looking at the 95 Houston Oilers team, your first year in the league. So yesterday, Trevor Maddich was on. I asked Trevor Maddich about playing with John Hanna, probably the greatest offensive lineman of all time. In a different twist, you go to training camp and you line up against Chuck Cecil, who 2 years before is on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and the caption is Chuck Cecil too vicious for the NFL.
Oh.
You're in college. You
Yeah.
don't see Chuck Cecil's. You're in NFL.
No.
What was that like going against guys with the did the reputation precede these guys?
Yeah. You know what's so funny is when I walked in, that's funny because I did see that magazine, and at first I was a little nervous, but then I went out there I know this is funny, but when I went out there for my first 7-on-7, he's not fast at all. So I knew I knew if I can just run, he's not gonna hit me. So that was the good part about it. When I tell you, Chuck Cecil will run through your lips, he will knock your mustache off, he will even break your shoulders. But he's got to catch you first. He might have been the slowest safety I've ever seen. But when he catch you and he hits you in your lips, you better have every pad on because he'll strike you in the mouth.
Well, let me ask you this. Well, how fast was Blaine Bishop?
Blaine Bishop was fast. I mean, let me tell you something, Dwayne, about Blaine Bishop. Blaine Bishop, if he caught you standing there, he's going to run through your face. And the reason why I love Blaine Bishop is he just played with a chip on his shoulder. He played with an attitude. He played every position fast. Now, it just shows you, he came from Ball State, and everybody talked about his size. Everybody talked about what he could do. But to watch him practice, to watch him hit people that was 3 times as big as him, it just shows you that's why he's in the Tennessee Hall of Fame.
Well, I remember Blaine, when y'all played down in Memphis against the Raiders, when he broke his forearm, I forget who he hit for the Raiders that caught a pass in the end zone, but I thought Blaine killed him. I'm like, this guy's not getting up. And then Blaine gets up and his arm's dangling. Those guys, those guys are a different thing. And that's why, training camp, you see who kind of emerges. Yeah. I mean, Blaine was a 7th, 8th round draft choice. All he needed though was an opportunity. And that's what Adam and I are talking about. All these guys need is an opportunity to make themselves shine.
Yeah. That's a great, man, I love that you said opportunity. And the thing about it is, and that's the reason why I know a lot of people want to get rid of a lot of games for preseason. They want to get a lot of the practices, but sometimes you're going to miss those diamonds in the rough. I mean, look at Wes Welker. If Wes Welker didn't have, a lot of the training camp and a lot of those preseason games, we probably would have not even heard of him. So I agree with you 100%. That's where you find guys that are diamond in the rough. That's where you find those guys that are gritty. That's where you find those guys that complete your team. But, the era's kind of changed a little bit. But if they get back to that and go back to 4 games, you're going to start finding those more diamonds in the rough.
Chris Sanders joining us on Stillman and Company. So let's find who that training camp star could be this season. So of the players on the roster who are maybe lower on the depth chart, who is a player or players that you will be keeping your eye on when training camp starts?
A defensive back.
Oh, no.
And the thing about it is, me and TD talk about him all the time. He's a straight dog. I mean, he will choke you at the line of scrimmage. He'll hit you in the mouth. He came in undrafted. Nobody really knew about him, but he came in OTAs and he came in camp, and he's proven himself to maybe have a chance to be the 4th or 5th corner. So those are kind of cats that you want to see. A guy that came in OTAs and mandatory camp and was locking people up. So that's the guy that I really, really, really going to keep my eye on in camp because, man, I'm going to tell you something. That guy can get a roster spot.
Now, I just have to say, Chris, when you were naming the player, your phone cut out. So that was a great description, but we don't know who you're talking about. So can you tell us who you said?
It was Gabe Judy.
Gabe Judy Lolly? Okay.
Yes. He's that dude. I'm sorry. I got a cricket phone. I'm sorry about that.
It was a great description. Joe and I are just looking at each other like, whoever this is, he sounds awesome, but we need to hear who it is from Chris.
But it's Gabe. I love what he's doing in camp. TD loves him. I love him. And he just brings that type of attitude that you want on defense. I mean, we always talk about the defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. He wants guys that play violent, guys that want to hit you in the mouth, guys that want to run through your lips. And that's a guy like that. I mean, he's choking people at the line of scrimmage. So that's a guy that I'm definitely going to be looking for in camp. So I'm excited about it. I'm ready to see it because you never know. He might get that 4th or 5th cornerback position.
We talked earlier, but the opportunity, getting your chance to shine. I had spent time with Colton Dow a few months ago. He's 7th rounder out of UT Martin, and we talked about being rivers and all that. And he's like, he goes, I know it's a crowded room. He goes, but I'm gonna find my way on this team because I'm gonna make them know I'm on special teams. I'm like, what's that like? He's like, I just want to be a gunner. I want to help this team any way possible. And that goes to what you always say, Chris, is always find something to help the team. And you got guys like Colton Dow who can make a great career out of being special teamers, which are, important to the team.
Let me give you a perfect example. 1996, and this is a true story. There was a guy from Texas A&M. He came in as a wide receiver. He played tight end, but came in as a wide receiver. His name was Chris Sanders. True story. His name was Chris Sanders, and we had a crowded wide receiver room. So what he did is, this was the last week of practice until people get cut. So he goes to the special team coach. He said, "Coach, can I just play kickoff return, whatever I need to do to be on the team?" So what he does, this was back in the day when you can create a wedge. So he runs down there, he jumps over the wedge and makes the tackle, and the whole place erupts. And the coaching staff saw that, and that's how he made the team.
Wow.
It took one play for him to get noticed on film, and he jumped over the wedge, made the play, and made the team. Same thing with Colton Dowell. If he does something like that and consistently shows up on field, you never know. He just might make the team.
I love it. Hey, I ask you about one guy. I love the history of the National Football League and your history as well.
Dave Craig.
I had a chance one time to interview Irv Eatman, and he might have been the biggest man besides Shaq I've ever dealt with. What was it like going to the huddle with a guy who's 6'8", 300, but built like, Lee Haney? I mean, what was that like playing with a guy like that, man?
Oh, hey, it was scary because when he walked in, he looked like the Jolly Green Giant. I mean, he was giant. But you know what's so funny? He had a great personality. I mean, he was joking in the huddle. He was funny in the huddle. He always would call me Rookie. He said, "Get back in here, Rookie." He had a deep voice. I mean, he kind of looked like a tall Gary Coleman. I mean, he was big, swole, a big Gary Coleman. But he's one of those guys that if he catch you slipping, he's gonna run straight through your face. So, hey, it was an honor to play with that guy, Irv Eatman.
Nice.
It's hard to it's hard to top a tall Gary Coleman. I think that I mean there's I don't think we could end it anywhere better than that. Chris Sanders joins us as he does every Wednesday. Chris, thank you so much.
Man, appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Peace out.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Man, I've looked up Irv Eatman. He does look like a tall Gary Coleman.
He massive, and that guy played offensive line. He was massively huge.
Yeah, 6'7", 293 pounds, according to Football Reference. That's a large man. But when we come back to Stillman and Company, a prominent NFL player has changed his name. We'll get into the reasons why, as well as our favorite professional athlete name changes. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Stillman and Company on ESPN 1025, 1063. The Game, broadcasting from the busy Plumbing, Heating, and Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today. Ian Safari is here as well. This just came across my timeline from a couple of hours ago, but I thought it was interesting. Some NBA broadcasting news. The NBA network executives finalized contracts that will make NBC and Amazon Prime Video new partners while maintaining ABC and ESPN as the home of the NBA Finals under agreements that will extend for 11 seasons and be worth $76 billion. Executives with direct knowledge of the deals, that according to The Athletic.
Good Lord,
$76 billion for NBA TV rights. Now I hear, I mean,
I got a lot to say, but I can't. I don't know what to say.
Well, I mean, it's a boatload of money. I don't know if I will ever, or most people will ever see $76 billion in their lives, but that's how much multiple broadcast networks will be paying to broadcast NBA games. But yesterday I came across a story. Now, Joe, when I say name Josh Allen, where does your mind immediately go?
The Bills quarterback.
Correct. There is also another Josh Allen in the NFL, a good, like another prominent player. He's a defensive end for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes.
Josh Allen. Very good player.
Great.
He announced on Tuesday that he is changing his last name, Josh Allen, to Josh Hines Allen, HINES ALLEN, to quote, pay tribute to Joshua's maternal side of the family and the other relatives who have worn Hines and Hines Allen on their jerseys. So his sister plays for the WNBA's Washington Mystics. He had one of his sisters. Two of his other sisters played college basketball. And multiple family members who were athletes played under the name Hines Allen. So Josh Allen, the Jaguars player, is changing his name to Josh Hines Allen. Now, I'm sure there might have something to, like, I'm not discounting those reasons, which are very good reasons. I'm also sure he's tired of being known as the other Josh Allen.
Right.
So it got me thinking about the best athlete name changes. Now, changing from Josh Allen to Josh Hines Allen is not a huge change, and there have been far more creative name changes. Chad Ochocinco, from Chad Johnson to Chad Ochocinco, comes to mind. Ron Artest to Meta World Peace comes to mind as well. So, Joe, who are your favorite athletes who underwent a name change?
World Be Free.
That's a good one.
He was Lloyd Free, and he went World Be Free. And I just love because somebody one time was like, well, Lloyd Free. I'm like, Lloyd Free? And it's like, oh, World Be Free. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I know who that guy is. My favorite name change of all time, and I just love this one, was Charles Atlas, the bodybuilder from the 20s and 30s. And he was the poster boy for all that, back then, being fit. His real name was Angelo Siciliano. And he named his name to Charles Atlas, was just, I'd have no problem with Angelo Siciliano. That's fine. But Charles Atlas is just, you realize who that guy is. Like, man, that's fantastic. There were some religious ones. Like, I grew up with Chris Jackson, LSU player, and all of a sudden he's Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. So it's one of those, they change, and that's fine. If you change it for religious purposes, that's fine. But that's one always stuck with me because I remember him as Chris Jackson at LSU, and then he became Mahmoud Abdul Rauf.
Yeah, many prominent athletes have changed their names for religious reasons. First and foremost, Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, Lou Alcindor to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This one popped into my mind because you were talking about my fandom of the NBA. Bobby Moore turning his name into Ahmad Rashad.
Yes.
Ahmad Rashad was a big part of like my NBA, what was it? NBA Inside Stuff? Was that the name of the show? Yeah, he was a big part of that. He was also, I don't know if this is the right way to say it. Like, he was kind of a Michael Jordan hanger-on.
He was.
Yes.
Which allowed him a lot of interviews and great things with Jordan because he was such a buddy of his.
Yes. So, the one that came to mind for me, which was not a name change, like the person didn't change their name, but they changed the pronunciation of their name, was Joe Theismann becoming Joe Theismann. I believe the story was because when Theismann was at Notre Dame,
correct,
they wanted his last name to rhyme with Heisman.
That's right.
So that he would have a better chance of winning the award because of the rhyming element. So
I ran into him 2 weeks ago downtown Nashville. And he just gave a speech for $50,000 at some finance conference. And Adam, we're talking, and I'm like, holy hell, you're Joe Theismann. He's like, yeah. And I was like, as an idiot, I'm like, God, what was it like when you broke your leg on Monday Night Football? And I said that.
I wonder how many times he's been asked that question.
That's his whole speech about coming back from a devastating injury. And I'm like, yeah. And so we talk about that. He said him and Lawrence Taylor talk once a week.
Once a week.
I was like, wow. And it was just, I'm thinking, hell, it's Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann is sitting here talking to me. And you finally realize, like, God, he was an NFL quarterback. He's not really that big. But that's another instance of a guy changing his name to kind of fit in with everything. So, yeah, I bet. And he lives in Memphis, too, which is kind of funny to me that he lives here in Tennessee. But, yeah, that's a crazy one. And Joe Theismann.
I remember when Ron Artest changed his name to Meta World Peace. Now, I don't know. He was still Ron Artest during the Malice at the Palace, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know if that precipitated the name change or had a part in the name change. But that was the first one where it was like, I feel like Meta World Peace was my generation's World Be Free.
Yeah, exactly.
And Ron Artest was a character, to say the least. But I saw that Josh, the other. See, you don't want to be known as the other insert name here, because as I just said, when you think Josh Allen, who do you think of? And your mind goes to the Bills quarterback. And it would be one thing if the Jaguars' Josh Allen was some sort of, to borrow Jared's term, Scarbini, but that is not who that Josh Allen is. He is one of the better defensive ends in the NFL. So
wasn't there a receiver that chosen
Robbie Anderson?
Yes.
Robbie Anderson changed his name
to Chosen
many times.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like he changed it many times.
Well, what if Adam Vingan could change his name?
He is Robbie Chosen instead of Robert
Chosen.
What would I change my name to?
Robbie Chosen.
I don't know. That's a good question. What about you? I mean, you've got a great name. Why would you want to change Big Joe Dubin?
I always like the name Hunter. It was kind of cool.
Like you would be Hunter Dubin?
Yeah. Hunter's just like, it just sounds cool, Cool. And that's the thing. What's the coolest name in sports? Anything like the guy linebacker for the Raiders back then, a guy named, ironically, intercepted Joe Theismann in the Super Bowl, Jack Squirek. I always loved that name because he never did anything in the NFL except intercept Theismann in the Rose Bowl, in the Super Bowl, and got his pitch on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But Jack Squirek's always been a good name.
And one you mentioned to me yesterday when I first broached the subject with you, which another one that is right in my cultural wheelhouse, right, is Rod Smart becoming He Hate Me. I mean, Rod Smart out of Western Kentucky,
yep,
was the star of the XFL.
He was.
I know that Tommy Maddox was the quarterback of the winning team in the original first season of the XFL, but Rod Smart was the face of the XFL. He played for the Las Vegas Outlaws, big time personality. That ESPN documentary they did a couple of years ago about the first season of the XFL, it was such a great watch. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Yeah. I love the story where they were worried about running up against Saturday Night Live, and Jennifer Lopez was the host that night, and they were making Jennifer Lopez wait because they had to get this game out of the way.
And Lorne Michaels lost his mind. That never happened again.
Right.
They would never delay Saturday Night Live ever again because of that.
I think it was because there was some sort of storm or something that knocked out the power at the stadium, so the game was delayed.
Something happened.
So they had to get it was something.
Did they also go to overtime?
I think it did go to overtime.
The worst things that could happen possible all happened. But Rod Smart was, if you brought up Rod Smart to a casual sports fan, Adam, they'd be like, huh? But if you go, He Hate Me. Oh yeah. God, I remember that guy. So that's a name that really stuck and really helped him get endorsement deals.
Yeah, he had a brief NFL career. I remember he played with the Panthers for a few seasons after the XFL. So, and I don't know if He Hate Me. I can't remember if that was his name on the Panthers jersey, if he went by Rod Smart.
Would you not copyright that though and get the name for that?
I'm sure he copyrighted it, but I don't know if he played with his nameplate as He Hate Me in the NFL. I don't know if that. I feel like the rules might be a little bit more strict in the NFL than the XFL when it was run by Vince McMahon. 615-737-1025. Josh Allen, Jaguars defensive end, changes his name to Josh Hines Allen to honor members of his family, but it did get us wondering about your favorite athlete name changes. So let us know. 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared, who continues to be on vacation. Ian Safar here with us as well, talking about athlete name changes now that Jaguars defensive end Josh Allen has changed his name to Josh Hines Allen in honor of his family members.
Do you think some guys, some names they're predisposed to be badasses? Like the name Mike Ditka
Yes.
doesn't sound like you'd be a good accountant.
No.
I mean, you sound like you'd be a bruising tight end that played in the NFL and was an amazing football coach. That name just Ditka. It just sounds tough.
It sounds like a football coach. And I found a story from the New York Times from 2012 when game changers become name changers. And this is a graph that I was reading during the break that made me chuckle. Buccaneers defensive end Greg White became Styles G. White, Styles with a Z, Styles G. White, inspired by a character in the movie Teen Wolf in 2008. The name draws undue attention now that White rides the bench for the UFL's Virginia Destroyers and looks a bit too much like lowers the expectations on the roster sheet. At least the former Artest and Lloyd, Meta World Peace and World Be Free, chose a pro-social message, not a Michael J. Fox vehicle. So that's the downside when you change your name to something like that. You better maintain.
So legally, he did that.
According to the story, he changed
Wow.
his name to Styles G. White, inspired by Teen Wolf.
Wow, I'm thinking, who was the running back that added another hyphen to his name to honor his adopted dad or something?
Was it Maurice Jones-Drew?
No. It was even that's one, but it was somebody else that added something else the back part of his name. And it was like, and they started calling him by that last name. Like, who is that guy? And he had, I remember he changed his name.
Yes.
And I can't remember who it is now.
I think my favorite Titans one might be Antoine Blake changed his name to Valentino Blake.
Ooh.
At one point. He was like
That's
this
right.
defensive back.
You're talking about how Ditka sounds like a football name. Valentino Blake feels like the cover model on a romance novel.
It was like
or a bowler.
He was a defensive back, Antoine Blake. He flashed for a little bit. He struggled, and he changed his name to Valentino Blake.
I remember Lawan wanted us to call him Daddy or something.
No, that just seems wrong.
And I'm like, no, I don't. A, I don't like you. B, I've got other names I'd like to call you, and Daddy's not one of them.
Oh man. Well, he was wearing hats that said "Daddy" on it, right? Like that was part of the
I
bussin'
think
with
so.
the boys thing.
Or
He
dad.
had a hat on one time, and I didn't notice it. I went back to Channel 4. I was editing video for the news, and I realized what his hat said, and I can't say it on air, but I almost aired it on TV. And I'll tell you guys during the break, but it was like, oh,
You
man.
caught it though? You could blur it out? Or
No,
not?
I had like 5 minutes. I was like, I can't use this soundbite. So I just covered it with video. So you didn't see Lawan, you just heard his voice, but he'd wear those hats, and he would drive me. And I told it was Jill yesterday. I'm sure, Adam, there's players that you've dealt with throughout the years that just drive you crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I need a soundbite for the news, and he's playing grab ass with his buddies and all that. And I'm like, I just need a soundbite. And so eventually I just did not go anywhere near him because I couldn't get the soundbite, an interview that I needed, because he was being a complete jerk. I just kind of walked off.
Valentino Blake, like I think Fabio, I think Valentino Blake, like that's the guy who's on the cover of
Right.
the romance novels you buy at the grocery store for your summer reading. But Bill has been on the line waiting patiently with some of his favorite names. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. I sure appreciate it. I'm kind of an older guy, but two of the most famous name changes I remember is a guy named Lou Alcindor, played for Memorial High School in Brooklyn, turned into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then Cassius Clay turned into Muhammad Ali. Man, I remember those guys when they were young, when I used to be young too, but it was neat to see, and I'm glad for what they did. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, those are definitely the two most famous. Now, Muhammad Ali / Cassius Clay. I've learned about him throughout history. I mean, one of the most towering figures in not just sports history, but really history in general.
Well, I think Muhammad Ali and throughout history and Babe Ruth are the two most influential, gigantic sports figures of all time. I think Jordan is right behind there because of the brand. And you take on and off the court what they've done, and those guys are up there. And Muhammad Ali is certainly at the top.
I'm reading a caption. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with an I, Karim. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar attended UCLA. He played sports. He wore number 33. He's not the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar you're thinking of. The NFL running back was sued in 1998 by the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for having too many similarities to him and profiting off his image. The basketball legend won a court order, and Kareem, the other Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was really born Sharman Shah, was forced to drop the Jabbar from his jersey. In 2000, he legally changed his name to Abdul Kareem Al-Jabbar.
Yep, I remember that. Yep, and of all the names you're going to change it to, don't change it to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I remember he played. I remember because he was a fantasy football guy. We all drafted running back for the Dolphins back in the day. God, that was so long ago. And that guy's 50 years old. Makes you feel so old now.
Boxer Sugar Ray Robinson is the coolest origin story for his name change. Sugar Ray was born Walker Smith Jr., but when the 15-year-old boxing prodigy was barred from entering his first competition, he borrowed the birth certificate of his older friend, Ray Robinson. And the rest is history.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good little story there.
I like that one.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chad Johnson turning to Ocho Cinco, like that, I feel like that was the first one
That's
I
up there.
vividly
Yeah.
remember.
That's a good one.
And I don't really, I mean, it's not actually 85. I know Ocho Cinco, but that's actually not how you say 85 in Spanish. But it worked for him. It helped him. But he was such a good player too, right? Like I'm not misremembering his impact in the NFL.
No, he was great. He
Yeah.
was, I mean, a fantastic player. I guess, if you take non-sports, I mean, Prince to the symbol, from Rogers Nelson to Prince to the symbol, and then back to Prince again and all that. I mean, it's just messing with people, and you could do that. You could, change your name as much as you want.
Yeah, Bob Dylan. He's a good example. That's not his real name.
What?
Bob Dylan?
Yeah, what's his real name?
It's not Bob Dylan.
No.
I knew this.
It's like something Zimmerman, I want to say.
It's not that Zimmerman's not going to sell you as many records, I don't think, as Bob Dylan. Doesn't roll off the tongue.
What about Richard Starkey?
I don't know.
Ringo Starr.
Okay.
John Dusseldorf became John Denver. I mean, it's just go on and on. I mean, some of these guys, this Rock Hudson was something else, was all these different names. But I mean, you change it. But you can't change it if you're an actor. You can't change your name to somebody else. Like I can't become Adam Vingan as an actor. If you're already established as an actor, I'll have to be like Adam G. Vingan or Ian S. Safar.
Yeah.
You can't. So a lot of great names have come because they could not get their SAG card and being actors.
This one is good. Golfer J.B. Holmes used to go by John, but in 2006, he realized sharing a name with a famous adult actor probably wasn't the best branding decision. He's been J.B. ever since.
I used to work with one of his best friends.
Oh, is that true?
And we laughed about that because nobody called him JB. He still called him John. They all called him John Holmes. So it's very odd having to call him JB. I think he's from Bowling Green, or frankly, he's up the road. He's not far from here. And so it was like a change for his friends too. Like, oh yeah, you're JB. Wait, I've never called you that. But yeah, sorry, we'll keep calling you John Holmes.
Chase, who is also on vacation, has texted into my personal line saying Michael Hickenbottom, who, if I'm not mistaken, is Shawn Michaels, professional wrestler. But another one that just came to mind for Braves fans, Irvin Santana, right? Irvin Santana was actually Johan Santana. And then because there was also the other Johan Santana, changed his name to Irvin Santana so that he wouldn't confuse the two. There's
a lot that goes into
there
this.
is a lot. I mean, look,
would you change your name? I wouldn't.
No, I'm happy with my government name.
Yeah. Ian, you keep your name, right? Ian Safar sounds good.
Safar is good because you can rhyme. You can rhyme with some things.
Yeah.
And same with Dubin,
Nobody wants to be Dubin.
Nobody wants to be Dubin.
I feel bad for my kids who have that name.
Why? They should be proud to be a Dubin.
The only good thing about my last name is when bill collectors call and ask if Joe Dublin's there, I was like, yeah, and he's not here today. He'll be back sometime in the next 2 years. So I know.
Oh man. 615-737-1025.
Yes, we have YouTube has corrected me. Robert Zimmerman is Bob Dylan.
Okay.
And John Wayne, his original name was Marion Robert Morrison.
That's right.
That doesn't roll off the tongue.
No.
Like John Wayne.
Someone called
USC football player, John Wayne.
So
yeah, that doesn't sound as tough as John Wayne.
I mean, John Wayne just sounds like a badass.
The Duke.
John Wayne, Ditka, John Wayne. Yeah, those names sound. I mean, if you got a good name, I mean, you're halfway there.
If you have any other ones that we might have missed, I mean, I feel like we've ran the gamut here, but we probably have missed some. 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today at 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on ESPN 1025, 1063. The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today. Ian Safar with us as well. So I saw this on social media yesterday, I think it was, and I've pulled up the story from NHL.com. So Roman Josi, Predators captain, of course, was attending the Taylor Swift's Era Tour in Zurich, Switzerland on Tuesday, posted a selfie of himself, not only with his wife, but with Roger Federer. Now, if you know anything about Roman Josi being Swiss, Roger Federer also being Swiss, Roman Josi loves himself some Roger Federer, and understandably so. Roger Federer, probably the most accomplished, most well-known athlete to come out of Switzerland. So it was interesting to see that, you know, selfie side by side. And I didn't realize where that picture had come from. I thought, like, is that at Wimbledon maybe? Like, nope, it was at the Eras Tour in Zurich. So, Joe, I know you are a big music fan, big concert goer. Who is the most famous person you've run into at a concert?
Oh, that's a great one. Gosh, let's see. Famous. I thought you were going to ask me the best concert I've ever been to in my life.
Well, you can answer that too if you'd like.
Well, Jimmy Buffett, 1994 Starwood is a day before the weekend at Forrest Gump came out. It was, I don't know, I tied it all together. It was an amazing show at Starwood. Biggest, that's got to be somebody that we run into. I know there was an athlete, you run into some Titans at concerts. Who was the wrestler that we ran into at a concert at Municipal Auditorium back in the day? And I can't remember what show it was, but it was Randy Savage was there.
Oh my.
And
the Macho Man himself
just kind of walk, and he like Moses, he like parted the sea as he walked through. I'm trying to remember what show that was.
Was he eating a Slim Jim by chance?
He was not eating a Slim Jim.
Do you think Randy Savage actually ate Slim Jims? Like, do you think he ever actually had one?
I think he did.
Yeah, he does seem like a Slim Jim
Those
guy.
guys probably really got into their endorsement deals big time. What about you?
That's a good question. I'd have to think of, you know, someone that I ran into at a concert, but what came to mind was the most random celebrity run-in I've had, but it was mostly like my dad had the celebrity run-in and I just happened to be there. Long time ago when I was really young, we were on vacation somewhere at a beach. I think we were in Florida, and I'm splashing around in the water. And I see my dad talking to somebody on the beach, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, even at a young age, like, is this something? But clearly, my dad knows this person.
Yeah.
And as I walk up out of the ocean, my dad says to me, "Adam, say hello to Mr. Hornsby." Bruce Hornsby,
yes,
was at the beach.
Oh yeah.
And Bruce Hornsby, my dad is a big Deadhead. My dad just went to 3 consecutive nights of Dead and Company at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
What were the reviews on that?
He loved it.
Okay.
Absolutely loved it. It was before the NHL draft was at the Sphere recently. So so all I remember was I didn't really say, I shyly was like, hello. And then I just started like smacking my water shoes together to get the sand off. And I think I got sand all over Bruce Hornsby.
But that's Bruce Hornsby, though.
But that's just the way it is, you know?
It is. I remember when that song came out and Elton John said, I love the song because Bruce Hornsby's making piano fun again. I always remember that quote from Elton John. And Bruce Hornsby's badass. One time I worked at Opera Hotel, I got a cab for Richard Dreyfuss. And the cab was really small. And I got him in the cab, called a cab, got him there. And as a smart ass, I said, looks like we're going to need a bigger cab. And he says, hey, not funny. And they drove off. Nobody, I mean, I tell that story to people. They're like, well, I don't get it. I'm like, did you not see Jaws? Gonna need a bigger boat. Like, oh, yeah, I get it. But I'll never get him saying to me, hey, that's not funny. And the cab drove off. I was like, oh, all right. I shared an elevator one time with me and my camera guy at Channel 2, shared a camera elevator one time with William Shatner. And he was trying to pick a button where to go at Bridgestone Arena. Didn't know which floor to go to. And I said, it'd have been quicker if we got beamed up. And he spun around and just shot me a look and didn't say anything. But hell, that's funny. It's William Shatner in an elevator. That's my story.
Ian, what about you? Any celebrity run-ins at the concert?
No, I wouldn't say necessarily any celebrity run-ins at a concert. I do think I went to a YOLO Tango concert at Exit Inn
Oh man,
a long time ago.
Right.
that takes me back.
And I'm pretty sure I saw the lead singer of My Morning Jacket, Jim James, there. I didn't really have an encounter with him, but he was there just watching the show. But no, as far as like being at a concert and seeing somebody, I can't say anything necessarily sticks out.
Have
But
you did you go to the Eras tour? Have you seen a Taylor Swift concert? I mean, she is from here. I'm sure you've had some run in with Taylor Swift at some point, no? When she was younger, maybe.
Yeah, I have. I did a thing with her mom on TV years ago when I was at Channel 2. They had a run into her. It was 2006. So she was just I had no idea who she was. And we were doing a thing at Walmart one morning, and there they were, very sweet, very nice. And then that's about ran into her dad throughout the years. Still lives in Hendersonville. I mean, she's from here. I was telling Jill yesterday. One time when the Billboard album charts, I forget what year this was. Middle Tennessee had the top 3 spots. You had Taylor from Hendersonville, you had Kesha from Brentwood, and you had Kings of Leon from Mount Juliet. So it was kind of really
I didn't
cool.
know that Kesha was from Middle Tennessee.
From Brentwood, baby.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The epicenter of music is Middle
It
Tennessee.
is.
No, but I like, getting to know Roman Yossi as I did, covering the Predators for many years. The admiration that he has for Roger Federer is off the charts. Like, he's a huge tennis fan, obviously. And, I feel like Roman Yossi, is ascending the ladder of great Swiss
Sure.
athletes,
Yeah.
just because of how accomplished he has been on an individual level.
Were you in
In
the
the
locker
NHL.
room when Alice Cooper came in? Were
No,
you covering the Preds then?
I think that was before my time.
Pekka about lost his mind.
Huh.
Because evidently Alice Cooper's massively popular in Europe, massively popular. And he came in the locker room. We were all in there. I was like, oh, it's Alice Cooper. And the Preds were like, you got a Sharpie? We got a Sharpie. And it was just watching a professional athlete go gaga over something like that when fans go gaga over them was something I'll never forget. And Alice Cooper was so nice. And he signed pictures and everything. And Pekka was beside himself getting an autograph from Alice Cooper. So cool.
Yeah, it is always interesting to see famous people interacting with other famous people and having those fan moments. But Robert is on the line with his celebrity run in. Robert, please go ahead.
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Good.
I've been back when I was in the Marine Corps back in probably 89 or 90. I was stationed out in El Toro, and we went to the Lafayette at San Bernardino just to go in and there's a random comedian. I can't remember who it was, but in the back corner, sitting all by himself, was Robin Williams.
Nice.
And we didn't know that he was going to put a show on that night. Nobody knew really. He got up there at the end of the night and done about a 45-minute rant. We had a blast.
What year was this?
It was probably, like I said, probably 89 or 90.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was sweet. And then I'm sure you covered, Joe, the names. Did you cover the Von Erichs?
We
No.
did not cover the Von Erichs.
Nope.
Their last name is Atkinson, I think it is.
Yes, the famous professional wrestling family, the Von Erichs.
Yep. Appreciate y'all,
Yep.
guys. Have a good day.
Appreciate
too.
you, pal.
Yes, wrestling is full of those name changes because you gotta sell yourself to be a big star in the wrestling ring. But
What's Hulk Hogan's real name? Terry?
Terry Bollea.
Yeah, that's not really going to resonate.
That's not that. There's Bollea mania doesn't roll off the tongue. Actually, kind of does.
He was in town. My brother called me with years. This is 1987 or 88. Mike Organ remembers this.
Mike Organ remembers everything.
My brother says, hey, get over to Gold's Gym in Madison. You won't believe who's here. Hulk Hogan's there. I get over there. I'm like, whatever. And I just, one of those times where you're just like, holy cow, it's Hulk Hogan. I mean, he was so nice. There was no pictures back then, obviously, but I was like, my God, that's Hulk Hogan. And all I could think about was Rocky III when he was in it. That was it. And there's Hulk Hogan, larger than life, at Gold's Gym in Madison. Long time ago.
Were they in town for a show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned Mike Organ, who I believe you'll be hosting with.
He is not.
No.
Mike has a meeting with his personal trainer Friday. He can't be here. So I have blocked him on all social media accounts.
Now that guy is talk about someone who remembers everything.
Did you see the thing where Jeff Pearlman wrote about beat writers who need therapy because they've covered losing teams? And Mike was number one.
I did not.
Because he covered Vanderbilt athletics for so long. It's like you kind of get that Stockholm syndrome where you just kind of get sucked in. You want the team to win so much because they're so bad, and they get into your mind. And so, yeah, Mike was number one on his list.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, if Mike would survive anything, like he was a great resource to me when I first got here. Continues to do great work.
He's great. He's the best.
He knows everything and everyone. I remember sitting nearby him in the Tennessean office, and he just needs a quote from someone. He's got this gigantic Rolodex of people he can just call. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It is. Chip Walters texted me, I met the lead singer of Flock of Seagulls on spring break in Daytona in 1984. And I was like, and? That guy would be, you could spot that guy probably 10 miles away.
Is it the hair?
It's got to be the hair.
Right? The 80s hair is.
Did you ever go any spring breaks?
Not like that.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to American University in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
So not a hotbed of partying going on there. So it was a different time, 2007. Ryan quickly wants to weigh in on his celebrity run-in.
What's up, fellas?
Hey, Ryan.
So you remember the bar in Green Hills, the plant ranch or greenhouse?
Greenhouse, yes.
Yeah, I stopped in there one night after a few Dr. Peppers and bumped into Jeff Jarrett coming out of the bathroom, and I thought that was going to be the highlight of my night. And so I went to the bar, and lo and behold, there he is, Steve Aaron McNair, right there. And man, I wore him out for about 35 minutes, and he couldn't have been nicer. Finally, his buddy was like, "Hey man, we're just trying to hang out." I was like, "I'm so sorry, you're the best ever." That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
As they pull your way, you're the best ever. I get that. I ran into Steve quite a bit. He was fantastic. I covered his football camp one day, and he would come out and bring us water. Like, here you go. Here's water, food. I'm like, you don't have to do that, buddy. We're fine. So, no, I appreciate you being out here covering my camp. And Steve was fantastic. It's simply fantastic to a lot of us.
615-737-1025 coming up next. I couldn't sit in with Joe Dubin without participating in a game of celebrity birthdays. So we're going to do that next.
Yes.
Adam and Joe in for Jared, 1025-1063, The Game. Stillman and Company, ESPN 1025, 1063. The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared. And like I said, I couldn't do a show with Joe Dubin without being a participant in celebrity birthdays. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Well, Adam, any advice? Ian, any advice for Adam?
No, I think Adam will be pretty good at this game.
Let's do it. Let's give it a shot.
There we go. Love the music. All right, celebrity birthdays. Got to get them within 2 years. It's America's favorite game. You think you know birthdays until you really don't know birthdays. Our first birthday today. Now, Adam, you got to get it within 2.
Okay.
The great singer, Arlo Guthrie. How old is Arlo Guthrie
Good
today?
first name.
Good first name. My son's name is Arlo. Everyone asks if I named him after Arlo Guthrie. The answer is no. We just like the name Arlo. Arlo Guthrie is 79.
Who is Arlo Guthrie again? I'm sorry.
Amazing folk singer.
Okay.
79.
I will go with 73.
77. Adam's on the board, 1-0. That's all right, though. The very beautiful Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. How old is Sofia today?
49.
54.
You know, it's criminal to be that beautiful. It should be. She's 52. Tied at 1. Good job, Ian. Proud of you, buddy. Adrian Grenier. I guess he was in Entourage?
Yes. Yes.
How old is Adrian today?
46.
That's a good guess. 50.
48. We call that a push.
Okay. So nobody gets one?
Nobody gets one. He's
Okay.
on the opposite sides there, but well done. Let's see. God, I cannot pronounce his name. He's a great actor. Chiwetel Ejiofor. He was in 2012, that awful movie. He was also in The Martian. It's Chiwetel. I can't pronounce his name, but he's a hell of an actor.
Yeah. This one. This is a stab. This is a stab. 51.
56.
47. I can't pronounce. I should probably look up pronounce his name.
Probably, but that's okay.
But he was great in The Martian. He was a very smart guy that tried to get him back
I
home.
never saw that movie.
What, 2012? It's an awful movie that you can't turn off when it comes on.
Okay,
John
it's one of
Cusack.
those. Yeah.
I think John Cusack needed to make his mortgage that month. That's why I took the movie. Jessica Simpson, who allegedly is moving to Nashville.
Jessica Simpson, man. Okay.
She's got to be close to my age.
Jessica Simpson is 43.
Oh, that's a good guess. I was going to go right on there. I'll go 45.
44. It's a push. You guys are on both sides of that. Well done. Let's see who else we got here. All right, let's get some of these. Singer Mavis Staples.
Mavis.
I don't know.
I think it's
Mavis.
Mavis.
You're right. Mavis Staples.
I have no idea who Mavis Staples is. So I'm going to say, and Mavis seems like an old-fashioned name. So I'm going to say 65.
78.
85. Actor Robert Pine. He was the boss on Chips. He's the father of Chris Pine. But he was Poncho and the other guy's name on Chips. I can't remember his name now.
Can't say I've seen any of Chips.
72.
80.
83.
You just missed the cut.
Banjo player Bella Fleck.
Oh, Bella Fleck and the Flecktones.
There we go.
See, I don't even know that. 57.
70.
66.
Oh.
Country singer Gary LaVox of Rascal Flats.
51.
60.
He is 50.
Oh, Adam got that one.
Adam's up 2-1. Moving on. We got there's a few sports birthdays we'll give you guys here in a second. You guys are doing well. That is it for the actor part of this. Sports birthdays. Andre Dawson, the Hawk, 1987 MVP of the Chicago Cubs. Andre Dawson.
63.
That's a good guess. 66.
70. The great running back out of Nebraska played for
46.
61.
64.
Ian is just like Ian has come closer to me on several of these, but is missing the cutoff by like 1 or 2.
Our best friend, Urban Meyer. We all love Urban Meyer, correct?
Rural.
Today's Urban Meyer's birthday.
Oh man, Urban is 64.
Okay, I'll go a little bit. Oh man, that's a good one. 62.
60.
Oh, I got it.
We're
There it
tied
is.
at 2. We're down to the final one.
All right.
Now,
Next.
I threw this one in for Adam today.
Okay.
This guy's name is also Adam. Adam Foote.
The
Canadian
hockey player.
won Olympic gold, won 2 Stanley Cups with the Avalanche. This is for the win. How old is Adam Foote?
Trying to think. I'm going to say Adam Foote is 49 today.
I'll go 52.
And the winner is Ian Safari.
Oh.
He's 53 today.
Oh, that was a close
That's
one.
how you play the game. You went the buzzer 3-2. Well done.
Not bad for my first go around.
Now,
Considering there were some people in there that I didn't know.
that was the best one of the week, though, is when Jill said Beck was 82.
Yeah.
That made us all guffaw.
Robbie
a
and
little
Rex
bit.
Road played Beck songs during their entire show as bump music.
Did they really?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
great.
And I guess
In honor
yes,
of Jill.
Of Jill. That's
Oh,
right.
It's
That-
fun, when you play with like Dr. Crane, because he's 19, and he's never heard of any of these people, and they take stabs at him. That's the best part about this game, because they're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know who that is. I've never heard of that person.
Well, I was sitting in with Nick, Keyser, and Frazier on Monday and Tuesday during your usual 9 to 11 slot. And they were, Keyser said that he and Frazier used to be called or called themselves the Knicks at night. And I said to both of them, what shows were on Nick at Night when you were growing up? And they were like, Full House.
Oh my god.
And I said, when I was younger, it was like shows that were were actual black and white.
Yeah.
Like it was I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and I Love Lucy. Like that was Nick at Night during my time. For them, it's like Full House. I was just like,
Didn't they
crazy?
have like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Was that not on there?
well, that was I don't know if that was
Technically
Nick at Night. That was Snick.
Okay.
Snick. That was Saturday Night Nickelodeon with all that and Are You Afraid of the Dark and such. But yes, them telling me that Full House was considered a Nick at Night type show.
Wow.
That'll
Yeah.
make you feel old.
Well, I'd love to. They should have ran Sanford and Son on Nick at Night back in the day. That'd have gone a long way. Those are the shows that I grew up on. They were Archie Bunker, Sanford and Son, those iconic late 70s, early 80 comedies, which just kind of still make me laugh today. Cheers, which came out in 81 or 82, still to this day, as funny as it is, you can find it on one of these like MeTV or one of these alternate digital channels at night, which is still great.
When you play celebrity birthdays on my birthday, which is in March, I've got some good celebrities on my birthday.
What day is it?
March 24th. It includes such luminaries as Jim Parsons
Okay.
from Big Bang Theory,
Yep.
Harry Houdini, world famous magician, illusionist, The Undertaker, and Peyton Manning.
Oh, Peyton Manning.
Those are pretty good.
All share
Peyton
my
Manning
birthday.
got some birthday March.
I got
24th.
Wayne Gretzky, January 26th.
Okay.
Wayne Gretzky, that's probably the most famous. And unfortunately, I have a bad one. It's also the day that Kobe passed.
Oh,
Well,
So I kind of have a terrible
yeah,
situation on that.
It is,
I'm
but
just
it's not a
like, eh.
birthday, so you
Yeah.
get it past.
So that's kind of a bummer.
I get the lead singer of Sawyer Brown. We share a birthday together, October 25th.
I was born on the actual day of the Exxon Valdez oil spill, March 24th, 1989.
Holy God, you're so young.
Well, see that you're one of the few people on the station that can say that because everybody else, a lot of the people I've been working with lately are toddlers.
That was that. I vividly remember that because that was awful.
Yes.
Awful. I remember they arrested the captain of the boat. They brought him in, Exxon Valdez. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, good to know. Well, that was my birthday. That was celebrity birthdays. I thought I did okay for my first go around on celebrity birthdays.
It's not easy.
No,
Chase,
it's
Chase
not.
went on a tear. He won like 15 in a row, but he's got the all-time record with 10. Although Ian, you came close yesterday or Monday.
Yeah, I think that was yesterday.
You had 8 of them, so that was a job well done. Willie's got 8 too as well up there, but people think and you just don't know.
Well, I will have to brush up on my birthdays
Right.
and
You can't.
give. I know you can't and give it another crack because you never know when you're going to play, right?
That's right.
Give it another crack. But for my first try, I didn't think that was so bad. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, it's almost certain, just based on history, that an NFL team is going to go from worst to first in their division this season. We break down the 8 teams that could qualify for that and which has the best chance of doing so Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today and tomorrow. And by the way, tomorrow I just got word at 2:15 tomorrow, new Predators defenseman Brady Shea will join us on the program. So Brady Shea signed on the first day of free agency to a 7-year contract worth $7 million per season on average. He will join us tomorrow at 2:15. I believe it will be his first interview since joining the Predators.
Look at you, Adam, calling in favors.
And
So-
you, Adam, you thought Shea would be a good fit for the Preds this
Yeah,
offseason.
I
found
think,
out,
yeah,
if
Shea,
I remember correctly.
I do. I like Brady Shea as a player. I like what he brings to the table. I could see him, playing a role next to Roman Yossi on the top pair, and we'll get to talk to him tomorrow at 2:15. So looking forward to that. But before we get into our next subject, I'm reading the call. I see the phone. I see what the caller wants to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it. So David is on the line. David, welcome to Stillman and Company without Jared today.
Hey, I just want to say, Adam, Joe, you are a breath of fresh air. And every time you know what? I don't listen when Jared's on the radio. I got to be honest. He's so negative about everything. It's unbelievable. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's interview with Brady Shea. That's going to be great. And just appreciate you guys on the radio today. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you,
Thanks,
David.
pal.
Jared gets a bit of a bad rep, I think. I mean, Jared, he's a realist. He's a cynic. So I think he irks people, and that's just part of who Jared is. But Jared, he's passionate. He's passionate about his teams and his takes, and you can't argue with that. So, but when you're in the studio with Joe Dubin, you got to lighten things up. That's
Right.
just, I can admit sometimes I can take myself a little bit too seriously. So today I'm in here with Joe. We're lightening the load a little bit. I'm glad he enjoys the show without Jared. But Jared, this is Jared's show. We're doing the best we can to maintain the integrity.
Is this like the one season when the Bo and Luke Duke don't do the show because of contract and the cousins come in? You don't remember that show, do you?
Is that Dukes? Yes, I know of Dukes of Hazzard, but I can't say that I watched it.
No, that's right. So one season they had a contract dispute. So John Schneider and Tom Wopat don't do the show. And they bring in, if you remember the Dukes of Hazzard's cousin, I'm too lazy to Google, call us 615-737-1025. I can't remember their names, but they brought the cousins in. And it was probably the worst season of television in the history of television because it was these two handsome guys, obviously not from the South. And now they're running from the cops in the Duke's car, the cousins. And I forget what their names are, and it's killing me right now. But it was awful, awful TV.
Someone listening will definitely have to know.
We talk about great names. Besides Brady Shea, what's a great Shea? Shea Weber.
Yep.
George Beverly Shea. You know him?
No, I don't.
He was the longtime choir director for Billy Graham. That was he had a hell of a voice too. He was awesome. My grandpa loved him. That's only Sheas that I know.
There's Nate. There's the George Shea is also the MC of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I believe.
There's another great Shea.
Yes, another great Shea, though it was not as good this year because of the absence
Right.
of Joey Chestnut.
Willie's probably dial in Shea Stadium. Don't forget Shea Stadium.
Yes.
Doesn't count, Willie.
But, speaking of worst, you mentioned worst television. There had to be a loser, a fourth place team in every NFL division last season. And Ian mentioned this to me earlier, and I found it to be fascinating. So in 2023, the Houston Texans went from worst to first. They were 3-13-1, and they went to, I believe, 10-7 to win the division. Now, according to USA Today, the NFL has now had at least one team complete a worst to first transformation within its division in 19 of the past 21 years,
Oof.
since the league underwent realignment in 2002 to create 8 sets of 4. So there are 8. These are the 8 teams that finished in last place in their division last season: the Cincinnati Bengals, the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots, the Washington Commanders, to the Tennessee Titans, the Carolina Panthers, the LA Chargers, and the Arizona Cardinals. So history suggests that one of those 8 teams will go from finishing in last place in their division to first place in their division. So, Joe, of those 8 teams, and I can give them to you again if you need them,
Wow, that's a
Which do
good
you
one.
think has the best chance of finishing first in their division?
Let's start with the ones that aren't going to do that. Titans aren't going to do it because they're going to go 6-11. The Patriots could be worse than they were last year, even though they have a former Tennessee linebacker as their head coach. The Bears are intriguing, and it all starts with first game versus the Titans. If the Titans can go in their opening day and punch Caleb Williams right in the face and welcome him to the NFL, they're going to stay last in that division. The Chargers are intriguing to me because they got a hell of a quarterback. I don't have any receivers, but Herbert is so good. And now Harbaugh is in, and usually there might be an influx of positivity and adrenaline when the new coach comes in there. That might be the one.
But that would require Kansas City loosening its grasp on the AFC West.
Chargers have always played them tough, which is throughout history, which is weird. They've always had to play the Chiefs tough, even going back to the days in San Diego. What was the one, the AFC South, not AFC, the NFC South?
The
Carolina.
Oh, they're not doing anything.
They have a new coach, and they still have Bryce Young.
So we've counted out you find the Chargers intriguing. Paul Kaharski would agree with you. He was talking about that today on Robbie and Rexroad. We're canceling out the Panthers. We're canceling out the Titans, according to Joe. So you canceled out the Patriots and the Bears. So that leaves
Titans
and the Titans. So
and Arizona
and the Cardinals. I would do that as well. So that leaves the Bengals.
There we go.
And the Commanders.
I like the Bengals. I think Burrow.
I think the Bengals are the betting favorite.
You can take the Commanders out too.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. They get Mariota at quarterback for the rest of the year, so they're going to be awful. Because of Burrow, he's the X factor. He's the true X factor, probably the National Football League. He is so good. And you got those two, and they're going to be, Higgins probably gone after this year. And, Chase is going to demand a massive contract. This is it for them. I mean, this is the one. They could do this. Steelers aren't that good. I don't see, it's the Ravens they're fighting against. That's the one that I would say that might have the best chance. The other 7, no.
Do you expect the Ravens, and this is something else Paul brought up today, do you expect the Ravens to, they finished 13-4 last season. They bring in Derrick Henry. I think Ian and I talked about this at one point. The last time the Ravens had a running back with the resume of Derrick Henry, it's been a very long time, since probably Ray Rice or even Jamal Lewis. Like, that's how far you have to go back, unless I'm obviously missing somebody. But the Ravens have been a top team for a while, and I wonder if I'm not as confident in them falling down the pack. And by the way, the last time the Chiefs did not win their division was 2015. Woo. So it's been a minute since the Chiefs did not win the AFC West. So I see what you're saying about the Chargers. The thing about the Chargers, as you said, they do have Justin Herbert, and when you have a quarterback of that caliber, anything is possible. But they lost Keenan Allen, they lost Mike Williams. I don't like Ian. Who did they get to replace them at wide receiver?
They drafted McConkey. Is it Lad McConkey?
Yeah, they have Josh.
Georgia.
They have Josh Palmer still.
Former Tennessee player Josh Palmer.
Yeah, so they've,
But they've always, that's the thing. But the
Harbaugh bump might be a real thing.
The people don't realize all you have to do is be better than the other 3 teams in your division to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Titans don't have to be better than the Dolphins.
Well, what's crazy about the NFL is, this is the thing, but injuries just play such a huge role in this league that it's impossible to predict.
No, so let's say Lamar goes down. What happens to that team?
The Ravens
now
are done.
Derrick Henry's running 35 times a game, and that's not why he went to Baltimore. So,
and the Chargers just need one break if it's close, and Mahomes misses 2 or 3 games.
That's it.
And the Chargers are there. So as far as fetched as it looks,
the Chiefs the Chiefs are bored by the regular season. It was evident last year. They're bored. They get to the playoffs, then they put it together. They go to Buffalo, they go to Baltimore, they win the Super Bowl. They're bored by the regular season. The motivation now is to get back and win 3 Super Bowls. Nobody's ever done that in a row. They have the opportunity to do that. I still think the Kelsey thing weighs in on that team. They were able to push it aside last year. I still think that's a factor with all the craziness with Taylor Swift and everything. Even though they got to the Super Bowl, I understand all that. But now it's a whole offseason of things that are going on. That's why I think the Chargers might have a slight edge to get there.
The Bears are an interesting one because the Lions won the NFC North, made it to the NFC Championship game. Are they primed to continue that, or will they take a step back? What we saw from the Packers and Jordan Love specifically near the end of the season, can they continue that? The Vikings have made a change at quarterback. Could be Sam Darnold, could be J.J. McCarthy. But I like, the Bears, they've got Caleb Williams. They've completely revamped the receiving core. They brought in Keenan Allen, if I'm not mistaken, from the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
They still have DJ Moore, who had a really good season, I thought, with Justin Fields. They drafted Roma Dunze. I think the Bears will probably fall short of the worst to first, but I wouldn't completely rule out the Bears because I feel like the NFC North is in a state of flux after being dominated by the Packers for a very long time.
But I think that goes back to the opening game. I think if the Titans can go up there, and if Caleb Williams throws 4 or 5 interceptions week 1, holy cow, man, they're going to be like, generational, haha, you're not that good, and it's going to just kind of derail what they want to do. So that's why that's a critical game. And I'm going to, when we come back after the next segment, we talk about biggest turnarounds. And Ian, you brought in injuries. There was one injury in the history of the National Football League which turned a franchise around that nobody saw coming. And it's one that hurts a lot of people in this area. And that's what we call a tease, Adam.
I hear that's what they call a tease in the radio business. 615-737-1025. We'll get to that next. Adam Ving and Joe Dubin in for Jared on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on Iowa. Pre-game at 6:20, first pitch at 6:35, with coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Cottle Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Adam Vingan and Joe Dubin in for Jared today, Ian Safar as well. We're talking about NFL teams that could go from worst to first in their division, according to USA Today, in 19 of the 21 seasons since the NFL realigned to 4 divisions per conference. A team has gone from last place in their division to first place in their division. Titans are among the group of teams that could do that. I think we would all agree that that seems unlikely. I would say that the betting favorite in that department would be the Cincinnati Bengals, who missed out on Joe Burrow for most of the season. But he's back healthy, and I think everyone could expect a bounce-back season from the Bengals in the AFC North. But, Joe, before the break, you teased something that you wanted to get to.
So we talked about biggest turnarounds and things that happened. Now, the current NFL format started in 2002, and then went to the 4 divisions, 4 teams. Before that, you had the 3 divisions. We had 5 teams in those divisions. So in 1998, there was a football team that went 4-12. They weren't very good. And the prospects of 1999 weren't good at all. In a preseason game, their quarterback gets sacked and gets his knee bent 9 different ways, and he's done for the season. That quarterback was Trent Green. That team was the St. Louis Rams. In comes Kurt Warner, who was on the team in 98, barely did anything the year before. Isaac Bruce was out the year before. But in 1999, he comes in. Immediately, they have got to change their offense, and they start throwing the ball. And thus becomes Kurt Warner. They go from 4-12 in 1998 to win the Super Bowl in 99. And had not happened, Kurt Warner probably wouldn't be in the NFL. Titans probably would have won the Super Bowl. And you go on and on. So little things like that. We talk about injuries, how they can determine the season and what happens. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody predicted the Rams from the Super Bowl in 1999. In fact, they started out 6-0. Their first loss of the season was here in Nashville when false start Fred Miller for the Rams had 6 false starts in the game because he was so scared of Javon Curse. And for those of us who were at that game, will never forget that October day when Javon Curse just went crazy. But again, that's an injury. That's a worst to first. That's the ultimate worst to first. And unfortunately, had to have an injury happen to your quarterback that goes on. So it can happen. Peyton Manning, Colts in 1998 were awful. Were awful with him. They're 3-13. He was terrible as a quarterback. But the next year, they go 13-3, win the division. Of course, the Titans beat them in the playoffs. But there are extremes that can happen. So this can happen. What you talked about, Adam, I mean, there's always these turnarounds that can go on. It's just you look at what's happening last year, this year, it's tough to see a team that can really break out of that. I mean, you think the Bears can win the Super Bowl?
Probably not.
No, there's no way. But we thought that about the Rams in 99. And look what happened to them. So things can happen. It's the extreme, but never, the answer is never no.
Well, let's talk about what it would take for the Titans to be that team. What would have to break right for the Titans to go from worst to first?
That's a great question.
I mean, and a lot of it has to do with what happens in the rest of the division. And we saw the Texans were that team last season, going from last place in 2022 to first place in 2023.
Right.
You had the ascendant CJ Stroud. You know, that team came out of nowhere. And if you're a Titans fan hoping that your team can become worst to first, you need a huge step back, sophomore slump, as it were, from CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. You know, you have to hope that maybe the pressure of the big contract for Trevor Lawrence gets to him. Maybe Anthony Richardson struggles with his health again. But in terms of like what the Titans can do, I mean, it all comes down. I mean, I feel like a lot of it comes down to making sure that they have an offensive line that can keep Will Levis clean in the pocket enough for him to pass the ball to all of those new receivers he has and to make plays. We talked about with Chris Sanders, what the ceiling for that receiving group could be. And now that you have Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd in the mix, it should be much more reliable, but it requires Will Levis to get them the ball. He has to take a step forward. But I feel like it's a broken record, but it feels like it comes down to the offensive line again.
It does, but I just see there's no way in Hades, this team even has a winning record this year. I just think they're not good. A lot of talent's going off this team. Who's going to stop the run?
I'm worried about their defense.
Who's going to stop the run? You got two corners. That's great. I'm going to run up the middle. Your linebackers aren't good.
They're relying too much on Sweat.
I'll double team Jeffrey Simmons every time, and I'll go up the middle. I will get you man for man and push you around.
They still have Landry, so that's good. But,
I'd make him rush upfield.
There's just not enough depth or playmakers on defense.
Thank you. You look through history. That's what wins Super Bowls. You can get points. I get all that, man. But when you got a good defense and you got depth at defense, can stand up, you win games. And, we talk about the Chiefs. Their defense was vastly underrated the last couple of years. And they win Super Bowl. Titans don't have that. Hell, I don't even know who the linebackers are.
They brought in Kenneth Murray from the Chargers.
Who was the worst free agent pickup, according to a lot of people.
They still have Jack Gibbons, right?
Yep. Dr. Gibby. He's still there.
It's not it doesn't have the name brand recognition that the receiving group has. But, the point about, yesterday, Jeremy Fowler on ESPN.com, every year he polls executives and coaches and scouts for the top 10 players at every major position. And Jeffrey Simmons was number 4 on the defensive end list. And with Keiser and Frazier, there's only so much that Jeffrey Simmons can do on his own. And to Ian's point, T'Vondre Sweat is a huge question mark, literally, because he's a big guy, and figuratively, because he wasn't available through much of minicamp. Right? How many practices did he have, Ian?
One.
Will be on what he does, because if he's unavailable, the Titans weren't panned, I would say, for choosing T'Vondre Sweat when they did, but there were a lot of head scratching. There's a lot of head scratching going on.
Definitely.
When they picked him in the second round.
Most of the national people we've heard said it was a reach.
Well, yeah, that. But then besides Levis, I think Simmons should be the most protected player on that team, meaning you don't have to see him at every practice. You know what he could do. Simmons goes down on this defensive line. Who do you got? Who's stopping him? They really did a bad job getting defensive linemen in there. I just don't know what's going to happen. And if Sweat is unreliable, then you're out with Sweat and Simmons. What are you going to have?
He's a rookie, regardless.
Yeah.
So, even if he is good, what's good for a rookie?
See, we got spoiled because of Javon Curse in 99. Because a guy comes in here and just destroys the National Football League at a level they had not seen since Lawrence Taylor, 1981. It was amazing. So now it's like rookies, they had to come in and produce immediately. And when they don't, we're like, okay, that's why Burks, he's a first rounder. He's done nothing. If he was a 7th rounder, we wouldn't care. But he's a first rounder. And that's why Simmons got to be protected during camp. I don't need to see him in camp. I need to see him on September the 8th versus the Chicago Bears, beating up Caleb Williams. That's it.
He's already made note that he wants to do that. It was with I think it was an interview with the Rich Eisen show, I believe. Ian might be able to tell me better.
That is correct.
But he's got his sights set on Caleb Williams already in week 1. 615-737-1025. What must happen for the Tennessee Titans to be the team that goes from worst to first in their division this season? Or are you on Joe Dubin's side and saying, don't even worry about it? There's not a chance of it happening. Let us know. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared. 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company on ESPN 1025, 1063. The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today, talking worst to first in the NFL. 19 of 21 seasons since the NFL realigned to 4 teams and 4 divisions per conference. A team has gone from the worst spot, last place in their division, easy for me to say, to first place. Lance in Clarksville is on the line, wants to weigh in on how the Titans perhaps could get from worst to first, or the team he thinks could go from worst to first. Lance, welcome.
Well, the Titans could go worst to first if their running back wasn't in Baltimore. Because if they would have lined up and ran the ball, thrown the ball 15 to 20 times, and they had a good enough line to run it down their throat, and that would take care of Joe's problem. If your time of possession was like 40-20, and you just run it down the throat, keep the defense, keep the weak part of the team on the bench, and the strong team just running it down their throat. But old times of football are gone, and this new guy's probably going to throw it 40 times a game. Wear our defense out by running out there scoring too quick and running out there and having to play. But there's that old adage: the best defense is a good offense. And usually those good offenses that do that run the crap out of the ball. I'll hang up and listen.
All right.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you for that. We remembered yesterday Tony Pollard's getting paid more than Derrick Henry is getting paid in Baltimore, right? Isn't that right?
Just about the same.
Yeah. All right. Which people are like, well, why couldn't we keep him for that? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Why you couldn't have kept him for that? I don't know. I'm not. Me? Yes.
They probably could have if they really wanted.
But at the same time, if I'm Derrick Henry, if I had the option, I know this team's not winning the Super Bowl. I know the Ravens have a fantastic chance to win the Super Bowl, and you want to submit your legacy, well, you add a Super Bowl crown to that as well. You think you're King Henry, here's your Super Bowl crown to go with you right there. So I don't blame Derrick Henry for walking off, and I know the Titans fans are still upset that he's gone, but Derrick Henry seems to be happy. I mean, he misses here, I'm sure, but happy with the opportunity to win a Super Bowl. I mean, you're winning a Super Bowl. It's not happening here for a while. I don't blame him.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were getting diminishing returns on Derrick Henry. Like, still an effective player, but not the Derrick Henry we came to know and love in Tennessee.
He didn't hit as many home runs last year.
Right. It felt like he was breaking fewer tackles. This is all anecdotal. It felt like he was breaking fewer tackles and all of that. It just felt like the big home runs, like Ian said, had become fewer and fewer, though I don't have the statistical.
Well, I'll contradict that by saying your offensive line was so bad. Look, running backs in the NFL just need a blink of an eye to go, right? You don't have to hold your blocks like in high school and college for 3 to 5 seconds, just enough to get the guy past you. He couldn't go anywhere. I mean, that offensive line was so awful.
It was
so bad that what was the stat of, I forget, somebody had it, how many times he got hit in the backfield after getting the ball? And it was most of the National Football League.
Yeah, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was a lot.
Yeah. So if I need to go down. Trevor Mattis talked about going downhill between the tackles. Derrick Henry in the last 2 years wasn't able to go downhill because that offensive line, which I blame on Mike Vrabel, which was so awful. He had nowhere to go. Just terrible.
It just felt like there were many times during the season where Derrick Henry would get into space. There'd be one, defender in his way, and the quote unquote old Derrick Henry, the younger Derrick Henry would shed that defender and bust out a big run, but he just wouldn't get he wouldn't get by that last guy. And it felt like there were just a lot of runs that would have been longer back then that were shorter now. But that's, just from my, I don't have the evidence to back that up statistically, but just from watching the games, it just felt like that. And another thing I found interesting was today on ESPN.com, Bill Barnwell had a story ranking the NFL teams by receiver, tight end, and running back talent. And there was an algorithm that he used and certain things that he weighed in making the decision. And he had the Titans at 19th. He had the Titans wide receiver, running back, and tight end talent at 19th in the league, up from 29th last year.
Wow. Okay.
A big part of that was because of the additions of Ridley and Boyd. But I thought this was a really interesting start, his reasoning why the Titans were where they were. He said, quote, "The Titans are your friend who hasn't played fantasy football since the pandemic and hasn't prepared for their draft. This team would have looked like a juggernaut in 20, but how many of its key playmakers can we project to be better in 2024 than they were in 2023, given their age and injury history? It is a better group on paper. Like, no doubt those wide receivers are better. DeAndre Hopkins can still do it. But, I think I almost like what the Predators did in free agency. The Predators went out of their way to sign older players, more experienced players that were still effective, like Steven Stamkos, like Jonathan Marchessault, like Brady Shea, who, by the way, again, will join our show tomorrow at 2:15. Brady Shea on the show tomorrow at 2:15. But there's only a limited window for those players to remain effective. And I feel that same way about DeAndre Hopkins, who's 32. Ridley is 30. And Boyd is also going to be 30. So I'm sorry, Ridley turns 30 during the season. Boyd will also turn 30 during the season. So there isn't much runway for left of those players.
Right.
So it's, that's the question. Like, they're clearly more talented at receivers specifically than they were last year, but their receivers are older and therefore have limited run left to be their best selves.
So with that, I'm not playing for the 2026 season. I'm not playing for 2020. Barry Trotz isn't playing for the 2026 season.
No.
We're playing for the now. And if I'm a fan, I don't hear my team is rebuilding. I want to hear you're reloading. I want to hear who you're adding. That's why if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm like, what the hell happened? Did we not sign anybody? Titans fans should be over the moon. They got these receivers. Preds fans should be ecstatic about who they added during free agency. I want to hear about how you're doing it now. Don't build for the future. I don't care about the future. I want to win now. And that's the thing that's important. So when they build these, like you talk about, well, he's going to be 35 this year. Okay. That's great. All right. He still is Stamkos not a hell of a player?
Still is a very good player.
Thank you. So let's worry about the now, folks, and not what's going to happen when he turns 37. I don't care. I know he's a great player. He's here in Nashville. When they hit the ice on October, whatever, versus the Dallas Stars,
10th.
That's a team.
October 10th, yes.
October 10th. That's a team that I'm going to love because they want to win, and I want to win with them, and I can't wait.
So would you feel better about the Titans if they added what they did and still kept Derrick Henry?
I would love it. I would love it.
Ian, what do you think?
Just everything and then swap Pollard for Henry?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure it fits, though. If you're going to bring in all those wide receivers.
You're right. You're right.
What do you like? Who's going to get the ball?
Right.
Henry needs the ball.
I think we're going to see Tajay Spears 75-25 over Pollard.
You think so?
I just really do.
You think immediately, or that's going to play itself out over the course of the season?
I think immediately. I think that guy's got talent. He's fast.
Spicy. That's spicy.
He's got a burst that is rarely seen in the National Football League.
I mean, to spend that much money on Pollard and to only use him 25% of the snaps, that might be malpractice.
I mean, I could see a situation where Pollard,
if you're going to sign him
that way, and then if Spears emerges, it moves in that direction over the course of the season. But I don't know if they would do that right off the hop.
That's where I kind of see in the free agency, like what we were talking about with the Preds. Like you can kind of see where they're going as far as where they were this past season, winning some and trying to bolster their roster to take the next step. The Titans weren't really in that position. Their roster and their opportunity to compete is, seems kind of far away. Yeah. And the money that they're spending on, Ridley and Sneed and Pollard, and I guess the Cushenberry thing makes sense because you needed a center. But those feel like, big win now moves.
They are. No, you are, and you're correct. And I like that.
I just don't know if that's where they are right now with Levis in his second year and the new coach, all that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't seem like a win now situation.
You know who agrees with you? Vegas.
Yeah.
Because the Titans are 31st to win the Super Bowl. They're tied with the Commanders, Patriots, and Giants at plus 15,000. The Panthers are plus 25,000. So they're at the bottom of the bottom, the National Football League, to think they're going to get back. But if I'm a Titans fan, you went out and you spent money on these guys, and I'm excited about the future because it sure as hell a lot better than what I saw last year in 23.
You think it puts pressure on Will Levis to succeed?
I think he loves it.
Given all the stuff that they added around him. Sure, they're like, hey, let's put some stuff around Levis. It'll help him.
Yep.
But is it, putting pressure on him to perform?
I think there's pressure regardless if you're a quarterback.
Yeah, if you're a quarterback, that's just part of the game.
Fair enough.
Pressure. Yep. But I hear what you're saying. Like,
because if it doesn't work out, who's going to get blamed?
Yeah. Right.
It's not going to be, oh, hey, he didn't have enough wide receivers around him. He didn't have any running back help. It's going to be because, Levis found a way to screw it up.
Right. And there's also pressure on Brian Callahan as a first-time head coach, as a first-time play caller, to make sure that Will Levis is executing correctly to get the ball to those receivers so that everybody looks good. But I was having this conversation with Robbie last week about, we were talking about the Predators and what their lineup could look like. And we were talking about, okay, well, we think Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault will be on a line together. So who's playing center? And we were talking about Tommy Novak. Like, I know Novak is in a different situation than Levis. It's apples to oranges, but it's like Tommy Novak is a younger player. And if you can't succeed next to those two players,
it says something about you.
It says something about you. So I understand what Joe is saying about, putting Levis in that situation to succeed with those top receivers who have been there and done that. It worked Brian Callahan saw it work for Joe Burrow. He had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd, and we saw what Joe Burrow could become. If that's the, I'm not saying that Will Levis is going to become Joe Burrow, but Titans fans can certainly hope that's what the hope is. 615-737-1025. What is a move the Titans could or should make before training camp? One analyst has his thoughts. We'll get into that next. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin, in for Jared, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The Game Summer Ticket Tour is back. Join our own Joe Dubin at Yazoo Brewing
Where am I
Company.
going?
You're going to Yazoo Brewing Company at 900 River Bluff Drive in Madison on Thursday, July 18th. Write this down so you're there from 4 to 6 p.m. as he/you gives away tickets to upcoming concerts in Nashville, including Def Leppard, Bush, Train, Dierks Bentley, and more. Also get signed up for the grand prize, tickets to a Preds home game, Sounds game, and to the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/tour. So you got that, Joe?
Damn, I'm doing all that. Yeah, I got it now.
July 18th, Yazoo Brewing Company, 900 River Bluff Drive in Madison from 4 to 6. See Joe, get some tickets. It's a good time.
Let me update my LinkedIn real quick.
Yes, make sure you put that on your Google Calendar. You can't miss that. The fans need their tickets. So we've been talking about what the Titans could do to improve, to be one of those teams that goes from worst to first in their division. And Pro Football Focus had a story come out the other day where they list one move every AFC team should make before training camp. And for the Titans, their answer is bring in a free agent offensive tackle. They write, quote, the Titans offensive line has been in the repair shop for a few seasons. The team drafted Peter Skoronski in the first round of 2023 and followed it up by drafting J.C. Latham in the first round of 2024, completely overhauling the left side of their offensive line. The unit is in better shape with the addition of Lloyd Cushenberry in free agency, but the Titans could still use some tackle depth and maybe even someone to push Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
I had to do it on this show, at right tackle. The free agent tackle market is filled with veterans like David Bakhtiari, DJ Humphreys, and Charles Leno. Though all three are predominantly left tackles, there are further options like Cam Irving, Billy Turner, and Connor McDermott who could challenge, but either way, the depth is necessary. Now, I think that's, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but that is by far the Titans, I think, biggest position of need is shoring up that offensive line. And I know that Bill Callahan is here now. And I know that Bill Callahan is a highly regarded offensive line coach. And him coaching these players will certainly boost them. But I feel like when Bill Callahan came in, or even when Brian Callahan came in, and there was the thought of Bill Callahan coming in, that I was going to say Predators fans by habit, some Titans fans thought that, Bill Callahan would come in, sprinkle some fairy dust on the offensive line, mix some and Peter Skoronski's Gatorade, and everyone would be better. But I think there's only so much a coach can do to improve the offensive line. So according to PFF, they believe the one thing the Titans should do before training camp is add more veteran depth at offensive tackle. Is that the one move or the most pressing move that they need to make on their roster?
I probably, but I mean, didn't they get Leroy Watson? Didn't they sign that guy from the Browns? I mean, he's not the greatest, but he was with Callahan, the Browns last year. They traded for him to bring him in here. My X factor is Dylan Radunz. I mean, if Dylan Radunz can if he could turn Dylan Radunz into an acceptable NFL player, that's a win-win. That answers a lot of questions going on, and maybe he can really get Dylan Radunz to become a good guard or right tackle, or so. I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll find out during camp, and of course, who they'll up in that first game. That's when you'll see what happens. But the problem with that, Adam, is if you're a Titans fan, it doesn't sound sexy. Like, it doesn't sound good at all. But it's so neat. I think after we saw how bad the offensive line was last year, how vital and critical an offensive line is to the success of your team. So although that's not sexy, I kind of agree with him.
Ian, what do you think?
I mean, it makes sense. They still could use some help on the right side. I think to me, it's more on the I think pass rush kind of sticks out to me as the position. And at this point, it's going to be hard to find some type of huge impact pass rusher at this point in free agency. But that on the defensive side feels like where they're really missing depth and impact players.
Right. And that's why so much falls on T'Vondre Sweat and hoping that he is healthy and available to help Jeffrey Simmons rush the passer. I mean, for me, I think it's the safety position.
Safety makes sense, too.
I think you've got Amani Hooker and Elijah Molden, which is okay. But I think they could use another proven player back there. I mean, the cornerback room with the addition of L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie, and you have Roger McCreary as well. I think that's a solid group. But I feel like that safety group could use another name player. I mean, I think Justin Simmons is still available in free agency.
Yes.
I'm sure I'm not sure how much he would cost, but someone like that that has skins on the wall, so to speak, I think would be very helpful for this Titans team. But I think the offensive line is the easiest choice just because it's been one of the worst units in the league
Right.
each of the
So
past
bad.
few seasons.
It's funny because, you draft guys, you sign free agent guys, and you hope your draft choices really stick around for a long time. Who was the longest tenured Titan on this team now, draft wise?
I think it's Landry.
From 18.
Was he 8? Yeah, maybe 16, 18, something like that.
It shows you the turnaround in the National Football League and how bad they've drafted throughout the years. Because it's not, I'm thinking 17 was when they got
Byard.
Corey Davis.
I
No,
think,
Byard
right?
was 16.
Byard was 16.
Corey
I think.
Davis and who's the guy that went to the Giants from USC?
Adoree.
Adoree
Jackson.
His name, Adoree Jackson. So they're gone. 16 guys are gone. 17 guys are gone. So it would be Landry. They had Rashawn Evans in that draft, was terrible.
Yeah, he didn't make it.
They drafted Luke Falk in 18, who was terrible.
Mhm.
Quarterback who's gone. And then, of course, 19, A.J. Brown and Jeffrey Simmons. But,
Yeah, with the loss of Henry and Byard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. That's something. That's just, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they've just drafted really bad, and you got a trip offensive line. And, again, it's not sexy, but that's what you got to do to win games, man.
I mean, I think Bill Callahan will help on just him coaching these guys will help, but just how much? Because it's up to the players to execute. And do they have the right players? I'm not going to pretend to be Jared and tell the right tackle story, which Ian can tell in his sleep or his nightmares, probably. How many times have you heard the right tackle story, do you think, in your life, Ian?
Oh, man.
Too
many.
Let me specify. How many times have you heard it from Jared?
I mean,
did you ever hear it from Floyd, or you only heard it from Jared recounting what Floyd told him?
I don't think I was there when he told the story in real time. I believe it was when Jared was filling in one day, and I don't think I was quite producing yet that show.
But you've heard the story enough times to feel like you were there.
Definitely.
Yes, and you know what? To Jared's point, it still rings true to this point because who's playing right tackle? Is it Petit Frere? Is it Dylan Radens? Can you trust either of them? I mean, right tackle isn't as important as left tackle, but it's still very important.
Who wrote that article?
Who wrote the PFF article?
Yeah.
I'll have to scroll up here. I will find it. I just
do me a
clicked
favor.
off of it. Yeah.
What does he say? I'm curious. What does he say about the Chiefs? We've talked about the worst team in football. The
Thomas
Titans.
Valentine wrote it so he said Kansas City. This is actually interesting. He says the one move that the Kansas City Chiefs should make is trading for T. Higgins.
They do need a wide receiver, especially because chances are their main wide receiver, Rashee Rice, got into some trouble.
Yes, he did. And they signed Hollywood Brown in free agency.
And so he'll probably be suspended.
How do you block a trade? And if I'm Rand Carth, I'm blocking that trade. Can you imagine T. Higgins going to the Chiefs? Find some way to block that trade somehow, some way.
Call the commissioner.
Put an armada around Cincinnati. Don't let him out of town. That's crazy. What does he say about Baltimore? What does Baltimore need?
Let's see. Baltimore needs to extend Brandon Stevens, who is their cornerback.
He's a good player.
Yes. So he says Ravens need to extend Brandon Stevens. So you're looking at what the top teams need to do.
Yeah.
He says that the Houston Texans need to add interior defensive line depth. Let's see what else.
See, those are moves that winning teams make. Re-upping one of your own players, adding depth to the defensive line. Nothing like, hey, you need a starting right tackle.
Right. It's filling in around the margins.
So he said Houston needs interior linemen.
Yes,
but they have Will Anderson and Danico Autry, right?
Yes, they do have Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter and Danico Autry, but I guess they need some depth. The rich get richer, I suppose.
I'm still wrapping my mind around T. Higgins going, if that pulled that off, my Lord.
If they pull that off, should we pencil in the Chiefs for another Super Bowl appearance?
How do you not?
I mean, Patrick Mahomes won a Super Bowl last year with a cast of
Us.
misfits at wide receiver. No, they
right.
did a little bit better than us, hopefully. But
Gosh.
you know, the Travis Kelce has years left in the tank, but who knows how many more years. 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan and Joe Dubin in for Jared today.
So I got something for you. Our next segment. All right. All right. So my question is, and call in, I'm curious about this. If you could go to a bar tonight, sit at a bar with one sports figure for 3 hours and just have beers and have them tell stories, what one sports figure, got to be alive,
Okay.
would you want to sit at the bar with you and tell stories? Just you and him at the bar telling stories. You might have some friends gathered around, but what's one person that you would love to sit at a bar with, have a few beers, and talk to them?
Okay.
I'm
We will
curious.
get to that. 615-737-1025. Call us in. Call us into the, I don't know. We need to get to break. Adam Vick and Joe Tubin in for Jared on ESPN 1025, 1063, The Game. Stillman and Company, ESPN 1025, 1063. The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin, in for Jared today. We will also be in for Jared tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a guest early in the show at 2:15 tomorrow. Brady Shea, new Predators defenseman, will join us. Looking forward to that. I believe it will be Shea's first interview as a member of the Nashville Predators. So looking forward to speaking to him. And Teron Davenport will also be in for 4 to 5 tomorrow for the TD Power Hour instead of the usual 3 to 4. Always love talking to TD. So we'll have that. But Joe, before the break, you mentioned you wanted to talk. If you could sit at the bar tonight with any sports figure living, because you can't have beers with a dead person.
That's right.
As far as I know.
If you could, that's Weekend at Bernie's.
Yes, let's say it's a weekend at Bernie's situation. Who would it be and why? And it is a good question. I mean, the first one that came to mind, I mentioned this at the top of the show. You know, most people know that my biggest sports fandom, I was born in Durham, North Carolina, home of Duke University. So I am a big Duke Blue Devil supporter. And I would always love an opportunity to, as the kids say, chop it up with Mike Krzyzewski.
Really?
Yeah, having the opportunity to coach Duke for as long as he did. Was also a player under Bobby Knight. Imagine there would be a lot of interesting stories. West Point.
That's right.
So it would be interesting to hear.
What's the first thing you'd ask him?
One of my favorite things about, one of my favorite times of Duke fandom, and this is something I had to go back and watch and research because it happened when I was very little. But those early 90s teams that won the back-to-back championships with Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, etc. The rivalry between Laettner and Bobby Hurley is stuff of legend. The two of them would just needle each other, and that's how they got the best out of each other to ultimately win 2 championships. And I've heard Christian Laettner talk about it. I've heard Bobby Hurley talk about it. I'm sure Mike Krzyzewski has talked about it, but I would love to get really into the weeds about the relationship of Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner, because that was a big part of what made those teams successful. What about you?
I would go Joe Namath. I think Joe Namath is quite, in the Super Bowl era, the most important football player of all time. In the Super Bowl, Jim Brown probably transcends all, but that was before the Super Bowl era. Joe Namath is the one that set the NFL went to the AFL and he beat, the Colts in the Super Bowl, guaranteed it. And Namath will be so much fun. And it's just to sit with Joe Namath and talk football about Bear Bryant and playing in Alabama and winning a Super Bowl and playing in New York and hanging around mobsters and gangsters and going to quit after your first year because Pete Rozelle says you can't hang out at a bar called Bachelors, which was probably funneled and started by gangsters and mobsters and all that. Then, you can't play because of your knees. And then, you're the icon. I mean, you're the iconic guy that kind of got the NFL rolling. And what was it like? It would just, to me, Joe Namath would be fast. And I've tried through Facebook, through his daughter, through contacts to get Joe Namath on the show. He's the one I would love to sit and talk to just because he was so, I don't know, what's the word? Amazing, important, fantastic, everything he was to the game of football. That's what I'd go with.
When I think of Joe Namath, my mind goes to this photo that was snapped by a Sports Illustrated photographer. It's Joe Namath. I think the Jets were playing a road game in Florida, and he's sitting on the beach in a lounge chair in a bathing suit, and he's surrounded by reporters. He's just holding court with reporters. Okay, it is the Super Bowl game. Yes. Yep. So, because he made his guarantee shortly there. Yeah, he made it. Was that? I don't know if that's when he made the guarantee.
Well, he was leaving a dinner, and somebody said, "What about the game tomorrow?" He's like, "We're going to win it. I guarantee you, we're going to win it." And they just ran with that.
But I think about that picture of Joe Namath looking cool, sitting at the beach in his bathing suit, and all these dorky reporters in their business suits getting to word with him. And there's actually a young Brett Musburger in that photo as well.
You're right. Yes. There is.
So, Joe Namath was, very much the definition of cool at that point and still, I mean,
And the reason I get this question, I love this because you don't remember, you weren't here at the time, but former Predator player Darcy Hordachuk was on my all-time favorite players. One time we sat at a bar and talked about athletes and hockey, and he told some amazing stories. And I was like, God, why can't you tell me these while you were playing? This was after he'd already left Nashville. And I'm thinking, I mean, just some great stories about how guys would headhunt Paul Correa, and then Paul would come to the bench and they'd make him and Darcy would make eye contact. So Darcy knew to go after the guy that hit him. And he said, I'll probably share this, but Paul would help me pay my fine. Because I went out and I know you can't go out and say that, and guys aren't allowed to do that, right? I mean, you can't pay a fine for a guy, right? That's not how that works, but that's how it went out. But I was like, God, what a great conference. This is a lot of fun because you really get into it. Now, there's other instances where you talk with players at dinner or something, and they get into like, this is great. Why do you talk this when you were playing? It's been fantastic. But Joe's the guy that I think I would love to just sit there and talk with for hours about football.
It's from Queens.
Oh, there we go.
So he was a big, that was
my
like
dad is also from Queens.
All right.
Look
So
at
that was like a big, I mean, Jets Mets heyday
Yeah.
for him. You know, my dad was born in 53. So he was like 16 or something when that hit. So like he's always been a huge Namath fan and all that kind of stuff. So
good man.
That's a good one. I'm not, I might go like, growing up, I was always a big kind of New York sports fan too. So maybe something like Patrick Ewing or Derek Jeter or something like that, probably.
Right. So you got Pat Ewing next to the bar. What are you asking him? First question.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
I have another Knicks one that I think would be a really interesting interview.
Okay.
Charles Oakley.
Yeah, Oakley.
Get Oakley to I'm sure he has plenty of stories to tell. But anyway, well, yeah, what would you ask Patrick Ewing?
I don't know. It's a good question. Just something about, the old rivalries
I love this because
with the Pacers or something like that, or, in the finals. And he missed a layup one time against Indiana in game 7. And I still remember that. And so I don't know, maybe something like that.
I would ask Pat Ewing, what was it like when Michael Jordan hit that jumper in the championship game in '82?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a good college career, the old Big East. Yeah, when he was at Georgetown. So I don't know. That kind of came to mind.
Because I'm weird. Like I had Rashawn Evans when he was here with the Titans. I said, where were you when Tua threw that touchdown pass against Alabama in the national championship game? He's like, I was on the bench. Jeremy Pruitt was our offensive coordinator. And we stopped, we paused, we turned around and watched the play. I just remember looking up the air like, man, Tua throws a deep ball. And I forget who caught it. Was it Waddle? Caught it in the end zone? I forget who it was.
I don't know.
The Alabama play, they caught the end zone, and then they win the national championship. So to be that's what my question for Rashawn Evans was. That's why I'm always interested what the first question what would you ask Oakley?
How do you really feel about James Dolan?
Yeah, when you got kicked out of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I know. I think I know, but I would love to know the unfiltered thoughts about. I was actually in New York when that happened because I think the Predators were playing the Rangers the next night.
Oh, wow.
And that the Knicks had that home game, that was the game that Oakley got removed from Madison Square Garden.
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, he was one of the original protectors. Like he was for Jordan, a protector.
God, yeah.
Became a protector for Ewing. On the line, we got some one guy says Larry Bird. And again, ask Larry Bird. What's one question you'd ask? The first question you ask Larry Bird?
Something about Magic Johnson, maybe.
Right?
That McDonald's commercial he shot with Michael Jordan.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Those are good ones.
That was pretty. I just would be like, where were you when Jerry Shishting started fighting Ralph Sampson in the '86 NBA Finals on the floor? I mean, where were you? What was going on then? I mean, that'd be another one we got in for Bo Jackson. What would you ask Bo Jackson first question?
That's a good question. I don't know. What about you?
I would say
something about two-sport athlete, maybe.
Well, I think, is it today or tomorrow, the anniversary of him winning the Major League Baseball All-Star game with that massive home run? And he was an All-Star. I mean, guy was a first-round draft pick in the NFL, and he's your Major League Baseball All-Star in '89. Had Bo not got injured, I mean, he probably would have been the greatest athlete we'd ever seen, two-sport athlete ever. Because he did that in football and did it in baseball.
Are you the greatest individual football video game player of all time. With him and Tecmo Bowl.
I love Tecmo Bowl.
He was unstoppable.
Yeah,
the
he
Tecmo
was.
Bowl.
You couldn't do that. Another one weighs in. Bob Uecker. What would you ask Bob Uecker?
That's a good one. Major league for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wasn't Bob Uecker choked by Andre the Giant?
Was he?
Like in a yes, he was. He was playfully choked by Andre the Giant at a wrestle during a he was like he was doing a backstage interview at one of the early WrestleManias,
right?
And I'll have to show it to you at the break. But 615-737-1025. If you had the opportunity to sit down with a famous athlete or sports adjacent figure and just ask them anything you wanted over the course of a few hours and a few beers, who would it be? Let us know. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared today. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk about my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I'm telling you, I've been using Hiller for years, and I absolutely love them. Ever since I moved into my first home, which was, 6 years ago, I have been a customer with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And this year, Hiller is celebrating their 34th year in business this month. They're bringing the celebration to you with their birthday bash. So from now until July 31st, enjoy free smart thermostats with select new HVAC systems, free water tests, $300 off new tankless water heaters, and if you buy 10, you'll get 2 free landscape lights. So celebrate Hiller's birthday bash all month long with, again, my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, they take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, celebrating 34 years in business. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Stillman and Company on ESPN 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin, Ian Safar, talking about talking. And
Yeah.
which professional athlete or sports figure would you love to sit down and just pick their brain for hours on end? Bubba and Belle Meade is on the line. Bubba, go ahead.
Thank you, Adam. I'm a little disappointed in you. You didn't mention Ovechkin. That would be a unbelievable interview talking about the Russian mafia and everything else.
The only thing about
you didn't jump all over that.
the
one.
only thing is that Alex Ovechkin, I would need to be able, I would need to be fluent in Russian.
I was gonna say
feel
you might
like,
need a translator
to get the most out of that conversation, because his English is good, but not great.
No, you bring along a very good looking lady, and that's your interpreter.
Okay,
I think
good to
that
know.
would go very well. Now the other would be Jeter. Jeter would be one for sure.
Hold on.
I'm
Hold on.
not sure.
What are you asking? We want to know what are you at? First question for Jeter is what?
No, I'm going the other way. I'm going to wait. I'm going to have a few 3 or 4 beers, and then we're going to talk about family and, being how important it was to be a Yankee and all that stuff. Then I'm going to wait. He's going to mellow at that point. I'm not attacking him. I'm going to then go in for the kill in the last hour or so. So I'm going to wait till later to get into more maybe definitive. How was it playing with Reggie Jackson? What kind of influence was he or a difference maker was he to the team, as well as a troublemaker?
Wait, hold on. Wait,
like
Derek
that.
Jeter never played with Reggie Jackson.
I thought he did when he first came up.
No, he came. First year was 96. I think Jeter's first year when they won the World Series.
Okay.
I think Reggie
Okay.
retired like mid 80s.
But still, I really admire Jeter, and I'd like to get into the Yankee aspect of it.
Sure.
With the Steinbrenners and all the rest of that stuff, and I'm sure, again, depending on, I don't know if he would, how much he would open up. But,
My first question for Jeter would be, did you really give swag bags to women that you took home with you? That was a rumor for a long time.
You got one more, Bubba? Do you got one more? You want a Yankee guy?
I'm trying to think of somebody for football. I would never interview Joe Namath because I grew up in Buffalo. I was a ball boy for the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to be 79 years old, and I can't stand Joe Namath. And I loved him. He came to the old rock pile in Buffalo, and we would destroy him. So no, I wouldn't use Namath, but I'm trying to think. Probably Tom Brady, I think.
What's the rock pile? Is it an old stadium?
That's the old stadium, and now the new one was built in '74, and now they're tearing that down. They're building a new one, coincidentally, like we are here for the Titans. So they're going to open up. They're going to open up here. Well, here they're going to open up simultaneously, from what I understand.
Hey, can I ask you a question real quick? I don't mean to interrupt you, but tell me about Billy Shaw.
Love him, absolutely great guy. I was the ball boy in '63, the summer of '63, so I knew all those guys. He was tip. He would give you a $2 tip when I was getting paid $1.50 an hour. And, for just picking up his cleats or something. What a wonderful person.
Yeah, I went to college with his daughters. I mean, his granddaughter. So I.
And let me just add one more. I think locally, for the local flavor, I would ask. There used to be a guy on Channel 2. His name is Joe Dubin. I would like to sit down with him for about 2 weeks.
No, you don't. Trust me, you don't. That guy's an idiot. No, you don't.
No, he's not.
He is.
I really, when I get a chance to listen to you in the morning, I enjoy it. But
I appreciate
this is
you.
better than. But I'm just telling you, this has been great with you guys this week with Jared gone. Oh, I can't listen to it when my wife's in the car. Can't stand them.
Thanks, Bubba. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, if I were going to have an opportunity to talk to Jeter, my question would be like, so really, you signed a couple autograph balls for these girls before you sent them up?
That's a great question.
Jeter's a good one. Bradford in the YouTube chat also chose Jeter.
What about Dylan in Antioch? Dylan, what about you?
Okay, so first off, for the celebrity, I'm going to go, this is more of the bar side of it. Probably John Daly came to mind. He's just, 1-2 majors. He's probably got some wild stories I could
Flamboyant, to say the least.
Yeah.
John Daly.
Oh yeah, I mean it would be crazy just to hear what that guy's done, what that guy's seen. But I had a Tavondre Sweat thought also. I'm not as worried about him as a lot of people are. You know, it's like we saw him in Austin. He destroyed people, just mangled guys, and it's probably hotter there than it is here. I don't know. I've never been. I'm guessing it is. But on the flip side, we saw Traylon Burke go off at Arkansas, and that hasn't interpreted, here. So I'm not worried about Tavondre Sweat yet. I think he could be a game wrecker, but we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, Dylan. Thanks. Dylan, hold on. You're sitting down.
Yo.
You're sitting down with Tavondre Sweat. What are you asking him? First question.
Where his new favorite place to eat is in town, because I'm going right there.
Okay.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Dylan.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, as for Tavondre Sweat, I think he needs to be on the field in training camp right from the get-go. If the Titans hold their first training camp practice and he's unavailable,
Please help us all.
It's gonna sound some alarm bells, especially
From 2 to 6.
Especially from 2 to 6 on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. That would be bad news. But John Daly is a good choice.
He's got some stories. John Daly.
Yes.
We have a call because I got a quick Daly story.
Let's get to Adam in Portland.
Yes.
And then we'll get to the John Daly story. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, so nobody ever mentions him, I think, because he's so awesome. But Roger Federer, I think, would be amazing just because I don't think he's ever gotten a parking ticket in his life. Like, the amount of focus for that human to be able to be at the top of his sport for like 20 years or however long it was and never got in trouble. Like, it always amazes me. Like, you think Tiger, Michael, all these dudes had controversy around him. Roger never had any of that. So I would love to just sit down and ask him how he stays so laser sharp.
Well, not only that, but you know what? I always find this amazing and confusing and perplexing. Like Roger Federer would beat the number 150th ranked tennis player in the world, like 6'1", 6'1", right? That 150th player in the world would beat the 500th player, 6'1", 6'1", and then on and on and on. How good is good? Does that make sense?
I always thought he was just, you'd always look at it. You would compare them, and I would see it growing up. I would see Tiger and Federer together, and they would even do commercials talk about longevity in their sports and who was the best. And just look at how they were both great.
Yeah.
But like all the controversy around Tiger his entire career, and Federer had none of it and could have had it all,
Yeah, it's all fascinating how somebody is so good and yet could maintain that level for a long period of time. And that's why tennis players, to me, man, I'm always mesmerized by them, how good they truly are compared to the rest of the field.
Adam, you missed your opportunity. You needed to be at the Taylor Swift concert in Zurich the other day. You could have talked to Roger Federer and Roman Yossi. You could have had that opportunity, but unfortunately you weren't in Zurich. So maybe you missed out on your one chance. 615-737-1025. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin, Hank Williams.
Hank Williams and Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, a duet?
Yep. This was the first time they used put together basically two voices in the studio because Hank Sr. died in 53. Turn up, Ian.
So speaking of tears in your beer.
Yeah.
Hopefully you wouldn't be crying if you had the opportunity to sit next to the athlete or sports figure of your choice. You know, maybe slip a little truth serum into their beverage of choice and hear what they have to say. Ian has been monitoring the YouTube chat. He's got a couple in there.
Yes, let's see. Joel says Tony Khan. He would like to ask him how he manages his time between NFL, soccer, and pro wrestling.
Yes.
And Ty says it's Tiger, and he needs the details of some of the mishaps.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way.
All right. So let me give you the John Daly story. All right. So during Fan Fest, John Daly's playing pickup basketball. And he's got his camper and he's got a Bentley that says Open 95 on the license plate because he won the British Open. Guy comes down there and John Daly is playing basketball in a just this vintage St. Louis Cardinals baseball jersey that's probably, it's 1,000 degrees outside. The guy says to John Daly, guy walks up and says, "Hey, I want that jersey." And John Daly says, "You go get me 2 kegs. You have 1 hour. I'll give you my jersey." Guy's like, "We'll be back." You forget it. We do an interview with Daly. He's fantastic. He's so nice. At the end of the interview, almost an hour later, guy pulls up. He's got 2 kegs.
In the back, huh? Just ready.
He says, "I want my jersey." And Daly's like, "Here you go, brother." Takes this nasty ass jersey off, hands it to the guy. He puts it on immediately. Then Daly starts finishing playing basketball without a shirt on. And it was fantastic. I'm like, this is why people love John. This is why if you go to a golf tournament today, you can walk behind Scheffler or DeChambeau, whoever. More people follow John Daly at a golf tournament than anybody else besides Tiger Woods. I've seen it. I've had friends go there and do this. John Daly to this day is still an iconic figure because we talked about this. What golf tournament he was in, he 12 putted on like the 15th and like walked off and was done. John Daly is that figure that transcends that no matter what, you're going to go see him do that. The rest of golfers are boring. I'll follow Daly on a golf course anytime, any place.
I came up with one during the break just by watching some highlights, and this is a recent athlete that has come onto the scene. But Caitlin Clark would be fascinating to talk to, just because of her meteoric rise to stardom.
Whirlwind, I'm sure.
There's been a lot of talk about her, and she's been the center of attention in the WNBA. She's sort of become this figure in culture wars, and she's been pretty guarded, understandably so.
Right.
And the opportunity to talk to her and really get to know what she feels about everything that's gone on in her career over the past couple of years, I think would be incredibly fascinating.
Oh, of course it would be. And we talked about the Caitlin Clark thing about, I got no problem with the rest of the WNBA trying to take her head off. I got no problem with that. The problem I got, where are her teammates? Like, if you're my teammate, Adam, and you get your head knocked, I'm going after the guy that knocked your head off, like Darcy Hordichuk did for Paul Correa. I'm going after, where is the help? Nobody helped her. That's the problem I got with Caitlin Clark and being helped. I got no problem being aggressive, taking her down. I got no problem with that at all. I got a problem with your teammates. The bad boys of the Pistons in 89 and 90 would not allow that to happen. That's why they were so good with Rodman and Sally, Vinnie Johnson and Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. They didn't care, man. You hurt one of them, you hurt them all. That's the attitude I love.
You mentioned someone earlier this week, Joe, that might actually be pretty good. John McEnroe.
Oh, I'd love. We had him on the show years ago. He was fantastic. Thank you. I would love to sit with McEnroe in a bar. And
that would be fun, probably.
Let him go, man.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic to sit with John McEnroe.
I would love to know about his turn on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I feel like, it's the thing that was so amazing about that show. It's mostly improvised.
Yep.
And, the number of guest stars that Larry David had on over the years, some of whom don't have a lot of acting chops. Now, John McEnroe has been in plenty of things in cameo roles, but he was great in that episode, which was, I think Larry David was acting as his chauffeur, and it was very funny. The Freak Book, that was the episode, the Freak Book. And they played off each other very well. So I would love to know about, his cameo on Curb Your Enthusiasm
that's a great question.
among his many, tennis victories and outbursts. And
That
such.
would be a great question to ask somebody like McEnroe. It's like Paul O'Neill, your episode on Seinfeld. I mean, did you read the script? I mean, because he acted great. Or was that improvised? Did you go along with what happened? I mean,
or Keith Hernandez also on Seinfeld.
Right. Hit 2 home runs. Are you crazy? I mean, the Hernandez one was awesome. That little, 2 or 3 episode spiel he had on Seinfeld. I mean, things like that would be great to ask them, kind of sports, non-sports questions, things in their life that went on. But Hernandez, how did you keep a straight face with all that?
And he's still broadcasting. He's part of the Mets broadcast team on SNY.
He would be a good one. Yeah.
He's, so he's very engaging. That would be a good one. McEnroe is a great choice.
I wonder how forthcoming Pete Rose would be in a situation like that.
Now I don't think it would be. Now I think you could just walk up to Pete Rose and just say, "Hey, Pete, tell me everything you want to know."
When Otani got busted for the his translator did,
yeah,
he's like, "Yeah, I should have blamed it all on my translator back in there." I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic," with things that went on. But cringeworthy was OJ before he died. He would put those tweets out there for the last couple of years. Was like, "Yeah, this is something else." Yeah,
a little awkward.
Yeah, it was. Awkward's a fantastic word to put there with that. But yeah, I mean, these are great things. You run into them, and you hope they'd be really forthcoming and open up and talk a lot about what's going on with their history and getting to know them. And like with Namath, I'd be like, Howard Schnellenberger recruited him and basically kidnapped him from Pennsylvania, hid him out because Maryland wanted to sign Namath, but Schnellenberger basically kidnapped Joe Namath and took him to Tuscaloosa. Could you imagine if that happened today? Josh Heupel goes and kidnaps a kid for 3 days so he can't sign with another school. I mean, the stories back then are fantastic. Hell, Whip Sanderson did Bobby Lee Hurt. They kidnapped him for 3 days so he couldn't sign, and he signed with Alabama. So the recruiting stories and all that will be something that I would really enjoy talking to Namath about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of Lane Kiffin and, leaving Tennessee for USC. I mean, I know he's told that story a little bit, but I feel like maybe he's hiding something. Maybe there's more to the story than we know.
That was because I was in sports. That was a chaotic. I was here, but we're getting video that night that he left. The best part about that thing was nobody forgot Ed Orgeron spent that night calling all the Tennessee recruits, telling them not to go to class tomorrow because if you go to class, your eligibility starts rolling immediately. He's on the phone. This is why Ed Orgeron's a jackass. He's calling these guys at night. Don't go to class. Don't go to class. Come to USC. If you go to class, you can't transfer out for a while. And finally, I know Orgeron in the 19 won the LSU national championship, but they ran him out of town quickly once they figured out what a jackass he was and got him out of there.
And that still counts as one of the if sort of taking our question and turning it around a little bit. If there was a story I wish I could have been a part of in terms of covering it, in recent history, I feel like the Lane Kiffin bolting in the middle of the night for USC would be one of those stories.
That's one of the Schiano thing was equally chaotic.
That was chaotic. I remember watching that from afar on Schiano Sunday, I believe is what Jared calls it.
It was, I was in the middle of that. It was crazy when word got out that he was going to do that. And I've never seen a fan base engage with each other as fast, as quick as Tennessee Vols fans did that Sunday to say, we're not bringing Greg Schiano in here at all. We're not. And then you saw what happened. Pruitt was a great hire too. Great job, guys. And then you move on from that. But that was an eye-opening moment I'll never forget.
615-737-1025. Any and all sports figures, athletes that you would love to sit down with, have a beer or two with, or non-alcoholic beverage of your choice. I'm not a huge beer drinker myself, so maybe it's a tonic water, something like that.
What's your drink? White Claw?
No, I'm not into White Claw. I will say this though. Several years ago, I went on vacation with my parents and my wife. We went to Bermuda, and let's just say
Some pinas.
pina coladas, virgin pina coladas, pretty darn good, my friend.
Today's National Pina Colada Day.
Oh,
It is.
Yeah.
I did not know
We
that.
did not get to that.
Hold
on
on, let me
celebrity
ask you
birthdays.
this:
Yes.
You go to Bermuda. Were you scared of the triangle?
No, I was not scared of the triangle.
Not at all.
No,
I won't go to Bermuda for that simple fact.
really.
I am afraid that somehow I'll go disappearing and then I'll be on Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack.
Well,
This
I made it
plane
back.
disappeared.
I made it back in one piece. So if you decide to go to Bermuda one day, I promise you'll be okay. 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin in for Jared on 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, ESPN 1025, 1063 The Game. Adam Vingan, Joe Dubin, Ian Safar. We've been talking about sports figures, coaches, athletes you would love to sit down with and hear them at their most unguarded. Wendell is on the line with his. Go ahead, Wendell.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down with Sam Pittman and find out how he kept his job last year.
You know, if you can make it to SEC Media Days, he's talking next Thursday, July 18th. So if you can find a way to get into the news conference, you could ask him there.
Well, also wanted to know how he thinks Bobby Petrino is going to help him save his job this year. You know, that was real curious to me because Eli Drinkwitz is, I mean, he's, you know, from Fort Smith area and grew up there, and he coached high school right there in Fayetteville. One of the coaches of the nation, high school coaches of the nation or whatever, and Gus Malzahn protege and Brian Harsin protege, all Arkansas products, man. And they had a perfect reason to fire Sam Pittman last year and pick up Eli and bring him home, you know, and it didn't happen. I just wondered how all that came together.
All right. So, Wendell, obviously you're an Arkansas fan, correct?
No, I'm an SEC fan.
Okay. All right.
I live in Memphis, so I got to keep up. I got to keep up with a lot of teams, you know, so.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I don't know why Eli stayed at Missouri. I really don't know why, because Missouri's not a hotbed for recruiting. I thought he would get out of there. I do think when they fire Billy Napier at Florida, that he's their top guy to come down to do this, because Billy Napier's not lasting at Florida after this year, and to get Eli out of there. So, but you're right.
Well,
I mean, my thing with Sam Pittman, Wendell, is that, and I told Adam this during the break, Sam Pittman was the offensive line coach at Georgia when the Titans drafted Isaiah Wilson, and had glowing remarks about Isaiah Wilson, who was a complete and utter disaster as a draft pick. And Sam Pittman was the one that was glowingly saying, oh, he's a guy that's going to anchor that side for the next 12, 15 years. Hell, he couldn't do it for 12 minutes.
Well, you know, the other thing, Eli has probably one of the easiest 3 schedules in the SEC this year.
He does.
And if he, you know, he finished second in the East last year.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And he has a shot at if he can win in Tuscaloosa, he's got a good shot at finishing first this year. Well, it won't be the East, but you know, he could definitely be in the top 3, and his price tag will be a whole lot higher than it was last year. And I just don't understand why Arkansas didn't try to pick him up last year when it would have been easier to get rid of Sam. Now they got to get rid of Sam and Bobby both.
You're right, Wendell. You're a good man, brother.
Thanks,
Keep
Wendell.
calling,
Thanks
man.
for the call.
All right, bye.
Pamela is on the line with her choice. Pamela, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And now I just started listening. I have no idea if anyone has mentioned this at all. But I have 3. They need to be at the bar together.
Okay.
I'd like to be their bartender so I can listen to the stories right there firsthand. Coach K, Dean Smith, and Jimmy Valvano together at the bar telling their stories. I think it would be an amazing night.
That would be a fantastic night to hear.
Can you beat that? I don't think so.
Well, Pamela, you mentioned Mike Krzyzewski. I mentioned Mike Krzyzewski at the start of the segment, as I am a Duke fan. So I would love that. Yes, that would be a very interesting conversation.
Because, you know, the
3
of them really were at their peak when they were all 3 coaching those basketball teams together.
Right, in the triangle. Like it was perfect. That's my wheelhouse right there. Pamela,
yep.
Thank you for calling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you, girl.
Wendell was very upset with Sam Pittman.
He was, and
Very
not even
upset.
an Arkansas fan.
No,
he's an SEC fan. He's one of those guys that just reach for the conference.
I kind of like it. He's got no really loyalty to a certain team. He likes the conference.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, the problem comes when you're a Tennessee fan and you're rooting for Alabama. That really upsets me. Or you're a Tennessee fan and you're rooting for Florida to do well. No, you're not. Stop doing that. A little discussion earlier.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I am one of those fans. I think I said this to Willie. I'm one of those fans that if another team beats my team in the playoffs, I'm not rooting for that team to continue on.
Right.
Like I'm not like, oh, you know, I can take solace that my favorite team lost to the champion. No, I want them to lose so that them beating my team is less meaningful.
Yeah, we had Preds fans call in like, I hope Vancouver goes all the way now.
No.
I'm like, no, I don't.
You need to be vindictive like me.
I want them to lose every single game going forward. Screw them. No,
Exactly.
thank you.
No, I'm not
Well, I've
interested.
always heard athletes kind of say, well, we kind of want that team the team that beat us, go far or win the championship so we can kind of rationalize how it happened.
Hey, however you need to sleep at night, that's fine. But I've always been one of those sports fans that if my team loses, I want the team that beat my team to also lose.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in the consolation prize.
What drink do you order for Mike Krzyzewski?
That's a good question. I feel like
I wonder if he's a beer guy.
I don't know. Came from a blue collar family.
Has he transitioned to wine?
Probably wants an old fashioned.
I think he might I think he could get down on some brown liquor, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. What do you think John Daly is drinking?
Anything that's close. Anything that's within arm's reach of him.
No, like we mentioned Derek Jeter, easy for me to say. We mentioned Derek Jeter earlier. He feels like a craft cocktail kind of guy.
Yeah, probably one of those IPA snobs that's out there. When I did an interview with a couple years ago with Daly at the golf course at Old Hickory, we go out there. He's like, "You want to see me hit one down the middle?" I'm like, "Yeah." He has I've got the video. He's got a cigarette in his mouth. He's barefoot. He gets an Old Hickory Golf Club, hits a drive without warming up. It goes 305 yards right down the middle. And the guy next to him says, that drive is longer than a night in jail. And I was like, yeah, fantastic. It's one of those things that you'll never forget, and you're glad you got it on tape, man.
Yeah, no, we got some really good choices there. An eclectic mix of athletes and sports figures. If only it could really happen. I mean, like you said, a lot of the time these athletes are incredibly guarded and they don't let their guard down until they retire, when the stories are still good.
Yeah.
But they would have been better if we had known that while you were still alive.
Exactly. Also, I know a lot of y'all are texting the text line. It's down. So don't think we're not reading your text. We would if we could access that. So we're getting a brand new text line that should be up hopefully maybe tomorrow, Friday or something. But still, don't think we're ignoring your text, because we love each and every one of them.
But we have loved the old-fashioned people calling in. Love connecting with people that way.
What do you think Wendell's drinking tonight? Wendell, what are you drinking tonight? PBR?
Yeah. That sounds right.
Let me ask you this, Adam.
Natty Light.
Do you think Wendell's in a dart league?
I was going to say billiards, maybe.
Wendell, are you in a dart tournament somewhere in Memphis? Let us know.
What about bowling? You have a bowling league.
Oh, bowling leagues are great. What's the bowling team that Homer was on?
It was the Pin Pals.
Pin Pals. Yes.
My parents used to be in a bowling league. And we used to go. Oh man, was it fun to just hang out in the bowling alley?
Could you smoke in that bowling alley?
Probably. I mean, this was like, the 90s.
Yeah, of course you could.
So
even
I'm sure
even if you can't smoke in bowling alleys now, you can never get rid of that smell.
Right.
Like the operational bowling alleys around here, if they allowed smoking at one point, it still smells like cigarettes. There's something comforting about that, though, I'm sure, for some people.
Yeah, we need to get a 102.5 The Game bowling team. I think we'd be terrible, but
we could have a good bowling alley. That could be a good
Who would be your four-person team?
Oh my god.
It has to be you and Chase. I feel like you and Chase would definitely be on that team.
I think Willie's pretty good at anything.
Yeah.
And he's left-handed, so he's got that different spin on the ball, would be good. And I'd probably get I like Dagwood from our sister station on the Buzz. I'd get Dagwood because
he could be a good. He looks like he could be a good bowler.
I think he's a worse looking athlete than I am. So,
we don't have to worry. But you got Chase on the team.
Yeah, Chase is on the team.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that. But maybe we'll put together a 1025 The Game bowling team at some point. Joe, it was great to be with you today. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Yep.
Remember, Brady Shea, new Predators defenseman, 2:15, Teron Davenport for the TD Power Hour. 1 hour later, 4 to 5 instead of 3 to 4. So Brady Shea and Teron Davenport on the show tomorrow. Should be a good one. Thanks for listening. Adam Ving and Joe Dubin in for Jared today and tomorrow. 1025, 1063 The Game.
And as we leave you every show, to our guys out there, listen, we talk about this on the Chase and Big Joe show. If you're struggling to talk to somebody, please dial 988 on your cell phone. Please talk to somebody. If you need to reach out, you reach out to me at any time. To the guys that have reached out already, we love you. Thank you for doing that. You guys are awesome. Remember, God has you on this earth for a unique purpose that only you could do. And if something happened, you'd be tremendously missed. And know that we tremendously love you guys each and every day. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.